Ever witnessed someone so fast on track you doubt you could ever be on their level? The mission of advanced motorsports is to demonstrate the speed is achievable for everyone. With the expertise of some of the best sim drivers in North America, we are set to release free content on social media and comprehensive guides on our website. For those seeking the ultimate experience, our Advanced Motorsport Institute and personalized coaching sessions are the way to go. No matter your level of experience, we invite you to follow us on our social media to learn to be fast.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Ready to start another great race in the Precision Racing League. Green flag flies, we're underway. Side by side, door-to-door contact. Incredible action here in the PRL. And they come together. After all the fighting, it ends in tears.
Hello everybody and welcome to the PRL. It's GT3 night here from Misano, round number 3 of our new season. First up, the GT3 Fix Series around this circuit. Not been on iRacing all that long, so some of the drivers in the week will for sure have been getting used to this circuit and seeing how they can race with one another around such a unique venue. Hello everybody, welcome to RaceSpotTV. It's myself, Ian O'Leary, and Dylan Coyle alongside me here tonight. Looking forward to this one, Dylan, although I've not really got any expectations in that I've not seen too many races around here in the recent past. It can be difficult to overtake on. We've seen plenty of GT3 racing in the past around here. Just wondering what we're going to see from the PRL here tonight.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what Misano is going to have in store for us tonight. Appreciate the warm welcome, you. And I've seen an open wheel race not too long ago here at Misano as we take a look at the GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series schedules. And I was thoroughly entertained by that race, but it is a flat track, right? So we look at the schedule and there's not too many flat tracks across the entirety of this schedule. Honestly, I don't think really anything except maybe Monza, if you want to say Daytona without the bank. But here's the standings, and it's close after 2.
It is indeed. Jim Feliz leads Cockney by a couple of points. That's in the pro standings, of course, as you can see at the top. Evan McKay is second, or third, excuse me, with Andrew Trickett in fourth position. Then Sully Sad rounding up the top five. Tyler Graff is tied on points with Sully Sad there. Luke Wallace is seventh, ahead of William Fencer, Nick Bruno, and Andrew Venaro, rounding out the top 10. In the AM standings, Jared Deploy is leading by 13 points. Of course, these guys score points from the same tree, if you like, as the pros, so the gaps can get rather large even after only two. But Pete Mayer is in second, ahead of Joey Costello, tied on points with Sean Provost. Then it is Colin McKenzie in fifth position, ahead of Buck Hamilton. Waldo Walden, another of the Corvettes, is seventh, ahead of Dan Elgin, Austin Fink, and Regan Chandler, the third of three Corvettes in the top 10 of the AM standings. The teams, it's SRT all over the place. They're leading 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with about 97 points over the first non-SRT team, B&O Contamania 1, who are in sixth place. That's Lunatic Racing, SGE Esports, Michigan GT3 Racing, and Madworks, who are 10th. So pretty resounding domination at the top of the team's championships. I think that is fair to say, even after only a couple of rounds. So that's how we're going in terms of the look of the season. As he said, Dylan, 9 rounds in this season this time round. Not any chance of rain tonight, by the way, and plenty of chances to visit Europe over the next 6 rounds indeed, as we just saw in that calendar. But before we go any further and discuss that, let's take a moment to shout out the sponsors that make this broadcast possible, starting with Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision 5 coupon code. This broadcast is also brought to you by Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers high and mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer right up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision 5 coupon code. This broadcast is also brought to you by the Book Kicker. Book Kicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. For more information, visit moradness.com. Mr. Hedge iRacing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest, or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. A great addition to any sim room. And finally, Advanced Motorsport. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on their socials to become a better driver. A big thanks to all of those sponsors that make these broadcasts possible each and every night, nearly every night, on the RaceSpotTV YouTube channel. You can view us here constantly, it seems, in the evenings. 80 degrees Fahrenheit on the road tonight, Dylan. I say tonight, it's really the morning, 10 to 8 in Sim at the moment. I can tell you that the start time is going to be 5 past 8. That's not very warm, and the drivers will be glad because it can get very hot in early July here in Italy. So it's a bit of a blessing for them, really, and a blessing for the tyres.
Absolutely. It is definitely a case where the tires will not be screaming for mercy after 35 minutes of racing action here in this race. I'll tell you what, though, we'll see a lot of difference in the conditions between the GT3 Fixed and GT3 Sprint Series race. A little birdie told me that there's a high likelihood of rainy conditions later on tonight. So if you like dry weather racing, well, get your fix in now. If you like wet weather racing, I say maybe hang on for another 50 minutes or so.
Absolutely. We're not set to see rain for quite some time in the Fixed Series, but things may surprise us from time to time as we go and ride on board with some of those who are giving us a little insight into what their setup is looking like. And what a beautiful sight that was, a McLaren down on pit lane. I'll be pointing that out as many times as possible a bit later on. There's William Fenson, 5th place at the moment with the Fencer Brothers racing team, currently on a lap at the moment by the looks of this in the well, I was going to say new Ferrari, but we've got another couple of new manufacturers to go along instead. The new Corvette is in second place at the moment in the hands of Luke Wallace, and we've got a few Ford Mustangs out there as well, although they're not particularly high up the order in the pro standings. In fact, it's down in 28th where we find our first Ford, and that is in the hands of an AM driver. But there is the Corvette. I mean, this is great to get the GT3 iRacing lineup freshened up in the last year or so. We've had a new Lamborghini, a new Porsche, but they've looked rather similar to the previous editions of those Lamborghinis and those Porsches. The Corvette looks so different to the previous one, not least the fact we didn't have the previous one in iRacing, and the Ford looks so different to anything because we haven't had a precursor to the Ford Mustang really anywhere. So it's a new look to GT3 in iRacing, and it's great to see.
Put some respect on that Ford GT for us, why don't you?
Well, it's not really, it's GTE to GT3, it's not, well, I suppose this car kind of is too, isn't it, I suppose?
Hey, listen, the old Ford GT machine was used for a long time as Quacknin goes down pit lane. Maybe going to get one more go at a lap here as time runs down to 2.5 minutes to go here. Yeah, you know, it was in severe need of a refresh across a lot of the manufacturers, a lot of the makes here in the GT3 lineup on iRacing, and they've certainly done a fantastic job with making it fresh and new. I feel like, you know, whenever you get to sports car racing, those are the series that are in constant flux year in, year out. You've got a couple new models, a couple new makes trying to enter into the highest levels of endurance racing across the world. And iRacing is the best way to replicate a bunch of different racing series. So might as well keep those cars, keep those brands updated, and keep the fans and the sim racers happy. And I think we're pretty happy to see even makes like Lambo, who have similar models across the years, it's still enjoyable to see the newest versions to give the most realistic kind of battles that we can see.
Yeah, that was the spectacular background of Brett Bunkari there as we were just riding aboard. And great product placement as well. I don't know if he's sponsored, but he certainly looks like he is. Meanwhile, fastest lap time, a new fastest time for Jim Feliz, who I was beginning to wonder where he was actually in the Porsche, but he's now on top again. Just 2 points ahead of Quacknin at the start of the day, but look at the 9 positions between the two in this qualifying session. That doesn't make for good reading at all for Quacknin. Makes for great reading for Jim Feliz, who's now got nearly a 1/10.5 over the rest of the field, and he's got a big likelihood now of taking that fastest time right to the end of this session.
Yeah, no surprise there. Jim Feliz always fast, not just consistent. You need to be consistent and fast to make it in this championship fight. He already has 1 pole, 1 win on the season. So does Quacknin in both of those categories. But Quack currently in pit lane looks like he's not going to start anything better than 10th. He might get a little bit pipped here by the end if anyone jumps over him. Not the best qualifying session for the driver currently second in the championship.
Absolutely. Look at the variety we've got going on here, by the way. The new-ish Audi of Tony Costello heading the McLaren. It might even be the McLaren placed all the way in 4th with Caleb Lamb. I'm not entirely sure, but certainly McLaren following on. Then the new Ford as well. The oldest car in the field versus the newest, still tied newest in the service. Great to see as the the qualifying session ticks by, the clock ticks down, and we end the session with the checkered flag. Drivers will pull off the road, and that will be that for the session pretty much. I don't think many drivers are still out there improving or doing anything close to Jim Feliz's time at the moment. There's Vincent Généreux getting to a stop. Best of the BMWs in that qualifying session there in 7th position. But there's the man who is on the top step of the session as a whole. 15 places, by the way, ahead of the AM leaders. Pete Major, we haven't talked about him so much so far. He is ahead of Waldo Walden and Joey Costello, with Sully Sad just infiltrating that little grouping of 3. Sully Sad has done pretty well to start off the season. He's currently in 5th place, but this has not been his best qualifying session, you would say, of the season so far. Luke Wallace going okay at the moment in these final moments, but he's not going to improve. The only driver who might well do is Evan Mackay here, but I'm not sure whether he is really looking to complete this lap or not. We'll wait and find out. I'm going to err on the side of not. Oh, it does improve. He just went through the bottom of our screen there. Apologies. And he does take pole. So that's a big surprise. I wasn't expecting that gap to get overturned at all, but Evan McKee has used that last lap time to take pole position by nearly 2 tenths.
I mean, that's so impressive. Not only is that important for how this race is going to go, he takes the bonus point for pole position, and almost as equally important, he takes a point away from Jim Feliz. That's a 2-point swing right there.
Fantastic. Well, a great situation we've got on top of the standings, as Evan Mackay takes a surprise pole position right at the end. Jim Feliz just less than 2 tenths behind, with Luke Wallace and Caleb Lehman on the next row. Make it 3 different manufacturers in the top 4. We'll add another couple as well of different manufacturers, with Ferrari and Audi on the next row, William Fenson and Tony Costello. Then it's François Genereux, another different manufacturer with Isaiah Osborne. Jared Keane is 9th ahead of Joshua Chinsky, rounding up the top 10. Last driver within a second of pole was Kwok Nin, who'll be disappointed with 11th. Tyler Graf is 12th. Then it's Brett Thurman in 13th ahead of Andrew Venaro alongside him. Andrew Trickett and Pete Mayer, the first of the AM drivers, round out row 8. Sully Sad may be disappointed with 17th as he lines up alongside Waldo Walden. It is Jolly Costello and Mark Elliott rounding up the top 20. AM Championship leader Jared Deploy qualifies down in 21st alongside Dan Elgin. It's Colin McKenzie and Buck Hamilton sharing row 12. 25th is Dale Pedersen alongside Christopher Rhines in an all-pro row 13. Regan Chandler and Jay Steffi are next up, with Brett Pancari and Sean Provost on the last positions inside the top 30. Ian Cabanas 31st ahead of Nick Bruno, with David Morse in 33rd and David Busterford in 34th. Robert Jeffries and Chris Treiber are next, with Siadan Stanivuk in 37th. Felix Feliz is 38th ahead of Barry Cochrane and Ryan Chandler, rounding up the top 40. And we're still going here, by the way. 41st is Kevin Berkvist to Scott Jeffries alongside, nearly 4 seconds off the pace. And then rounding up the grid, Joseph Carnes, Sean Mulholland and Mark Kalin to bring up the rear of the 45 on the grid. Temperature hasn't changed much, track conditions haven't changed much. If anything, it seems maybe a little bit brighter, but other than that, not really anything having changed. We normally get a slightly smaller grid, if anything, for the fixed series than we do for the open setup sprint series that we got coming up later on. 40-minute racing that you should stay with us here for on RaceSpotTV, of course. But this is a big grid on a not huge circuit, and it will be a task for everybody to get through these opening laps. And that was one of the statements, interestingly, early on given by Sean Mulholland into the group with everybody in the GT3 fixed series in. That was one of the big things he said. Please make sure you get through the opening lap.
Yeah, it's going to be very important for all of these drivers to make it through cleanly. We go into a quick right and then left-hand set of corners. Pretty quick chicane at the very beginning of this lap. 35 minutes, I believe we're going to do a full pace lap here, which is rare for any bit of road racing in iRacing. But hey, it's just over 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers in length at Misano, so you're very right about that. Not much room for drivers to kind of find some space, and because there are a mix of faster and slower corners along this Misano circuit, I mean, the dirty air will come into play as we get a look at that narrow but quick chicane that kind of starts off this Grand Prix version, this Grand Prix circuit here at Misano. That's also where pit lane kind of just throws the cars out to on pit exit. So all these drivers will be making one pit stop in this race for fuel. No expectations of a tire change. They don't have to pit, but everyone will have to pit. There's no mandatory pit stop, but they will have to pit for fuel. The question is, do they want to go for an overcut or an undercut? Do they run it until it's dry?
Yeah, I remember at Long Beach a few seasons ago, there was one or two going for a no-stop, but I think anywhere other than Long Beach, it's not really possible, to be honest. So So you're right. It's not in the rules that you have to, but you'll be pushing your car over the line probably if you don't. So it's probably best that everybody goes into pit lane. Just 35 minutes. As I mentioned earlier, the next race will be 40 a little bit later on, and no rain expected either. In fact, because it's maybe not because it's the summer series, but maybe one side effect of it is that most of our start times this season are either very early in the morning or quite late in the evening. Got a couple of evening starts at Brands Hatch and Spa coming up. Not darkness races, but we certainly won't be seeing the high temperatures of summer until maybe we get to Mugello or Imola, where we'll finally be starting in the middle of the day. It's quite interesting that we're not doing that at all, really. And in these summer temperatures, we're not subjecting these drivers to particularly difficult days in terms of the tyres, at least not for the next 4 weeks or so.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that, to be quite honest with you. I feel like when it gets way too hot, it gets very slick, and sometimes drivers are more worried about keeping the tires clean for the remainder of the race and keeping that car on track more than feeling maybe a little bit overconfident in making moves happen, forcing them to happen. So I'm good with the mix of that over the course of the season, seeing how all these drivers are able to handle the changing conditions as this season rolls on. We're almost through this pace lap here, going into turn 13 and then 14, and only 2 more corners after that before we get to green flag racing in the GT3 Fix Series.
And another thing that all the drivers were reminded of just before this race began was the fact that the leader is in control of the field. Don't try and jump the start. Don't try and do your own start. It is all up to Evan Mackay at the front of the field as to when we get racing. That will be out of the final corner, of course, you'd imagine quite quickly, but he may catch us off guard. Round the final corner we go, and the PRL GT3 Fix Series goes racing at Misano for 35 minutes, and it is a great start from Evan Mackay, maybe catching the likes of Jim Feliz off guard, who's got Luke Wallace and Caleb Lehrman right behind him going side by side. It's Luke Wallace who slots into third place ahead of Caleb Lehrman, then William Fenson who rounds out the top 5 in a clean opening to the race for the front runners.
Absolutely imperative for the front runners to get away cleanly. Now it's a straight fight between them all up top. You see already a bit of separation from 7th or 8th on back, and I wonder if that's going to continue to grow quickly here.
Well, look at that, single file right the way back. Outside the top 20, I think, was the first battle out of turn 6. That is somewhat the problem with the opening section of corners on this racetrack. It's actually not the best place to race. It's more down towards the back end of this track, going through 11, 12, 13, 14. That's where the big braking zone of this circuit is. That's where you can really make the difference, although it's pretty difficult to do it around there too. Qualifying that we've just seen, pretty important. Now it's about making your way through the field. For the likes of Quacknin especially, that's going to be a real difficulty of this day.
Absolutely. Quacknin is going to have his work cut out for him here tonight. You know, starting 10th on Fuji or Daytona, not as big of a deal, but as Costello goes way wide going through the final corners of this circuit. Man, that was an off right there for him, a 1X. As a reminder, 13X is a drive-through penalty for drivers who accumulate that over the course of this short race. And, you know, starting 10th again, it's going to be difficult at Misano for Nin to make up spots, but it's this kind of drive that he's going to need to do if he wants to call himself champion at the end of the 9-race stretch here, as we get a replay of what happened, I think, on the first lap.
So that it wasn't all clean all the way through the field, even if the leaders did get off to a good start. One of the SRT Porsches evidently has gone around here. I'll try and work out which one
one
that is.
Of the SRT Porsches.
Yes, exactly. There's about 3 million of them. Scott Jeffries I would go and place my bets at, because he's the last of them. There's no more evidence-based guessing than that. And I must apologise for it. The reason I was oohing, by the way, on the exit of turn 14, by the way, was Jim Feliz didn't get a very good exit at all. And not Caleb Lehrman, excuse me, he's 4th. But in 3rd place, Luke Wallace was giving him a hard time, actually, in towards turn 15. Didn't come to anything. And it actually looks like Feliz is now leaving the Corvette very much behind him now. But that could have been a bad moment. And mistakes will cost you around here. Don't forget, when there's someone so close behind you, following you, not only the fact they're following you so closely, but they're waiting for an opportunity and waiting for the fact that it may be one of their only opportunities when you make a mistake.
Yeah, 100%.
Mistakes very, very costly indeed.
And you're absolutely right there. One mistake here is compounded by the fact that you can't really make moves easily at this circuit as we get another replay here. Speaking about a move being made, oh, it looks like a kind of a sympathy spin right there. Two identical spins just going the opposite direction. They both get back on track and meet in the middle almost, and get going again is look who just set the fastest lap of the race on lap 3, Jim Feliz, or lap 2 I should say.
That was the number 12, by the way, of Serdan Stanjevuk, who span around in the Lamborghini there. Plenty of battling going on down in the back of the field, though, but not very much here, as you can see. Was that a puff of smoke there, maybe? Yeah, it certainly was. Don't know who's responsible for that, I'm afraid. But the leaders all power through it. That might be their answer. It's not Evan Mackay, but he is having to pass the ailing Corvette that's causing a real ruckus for everybody here. And, well, that is a terribly damaged car, I think, of David Morse in the number 21. Well, I'm not entirely sure how he's picked up that damage. Indeed, it's fairly difficult to do so sometimes around here, but he certainly could have caused a lot more problems for the leaders than he actually did there.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's, remember we were talking about at Misano, it's a 2.5 mile circuit, 2.6 miles precisely, and that's going to lead to a lot more availability for catastrophe to happen all throughout the field, with lap traffic becoming more of an issue. When the leaders do start catching up to the lap traffic as this race continues on, it's going to be even more imperative for all of them to try and make the passes happen as easily as possible, and also for the lapped cars to respect the blue flag conditions.
Absolutely. It's going to be very, very important for that bit of give and take that we're going to get over the course of the day. Also, Generu has lost a place on this opening exchange here as the opening lap and laps got underway and passes began to happen. It's Joshua Chinsky who is closest in behind here, with Kwok Nin also there as well. So important for his championship that he does move forward. Now, what's been happening further back here to some of the AM drivers? This was Joey Costello down the inside, qualified inside the top 3, was trying to make a move. Oh dear, and he did get touched as well by one of the Audis on the way through. Caused a real grenade to go off in the middle of that pack indeed. And speaking of which, we've got one here too. Joshua Chinsky down the inside and through into 8th place. Can Kwok Nin do the same? He's on the outside, and oh, it's all gone wrong for Chinsky, I'm afraid. And it all of a sudden looks like Vasajeru might get both his positions back.
Oh man, thinking about trying to force the issue here, Kwok Nin. I mean, he's got to make moves quickly. These two going side by side. The opportunity will open up. It's just, who do you want to go with? It's kind of anybody's best guess here. Nin's going to have a huge run, but gets a little bit tail happy there. It's just uncomfortable to be here because you're losing time to the cars in front. You really can't make it 3 wide. These two just keep scrapping. There's nowhere for you to go.
Certainly not, and now Brett Furman is here along with Tyler Graff too in those positions just outside the top 10. See, Graff's got a pretty good run off the final quarter there, but he's not going to do anything in towards turn 1, I wouldn't have thought, as we go on board with Osborne, who cleared all of this just in time. And Tinsky did actually, oh dear, Genero's off. Buster Genero's off the road, I'm afraid. Now, whether there was contact involved or not, we don't know, but he's certainly in the gravel, and he's certainly well outside the top 10, outside the top 20 now, indeed.
Man, that is an unfortunate incident there in the gravel. And is that some damage, too, to the front end?
Maybe.
Might be some damage for sure as we join back with Tony Costello. Costello chasing down Fenton outside the top 5 right now, but pretty much if you're within the top 7, you're keeping within a good distance of a podium position. It just looks like the race for the win is just going to come down to Evan Mackay or Jim Feliz, which, by the way, I mean, there is a drop week that will be factored in after race number 5. This is race number 3. Nonetheless, it's these kinds of races that Feliz can become champion with. Even if you lose a race to a championship rival, you've given yourself some good padding. Yeah. As man, that's some oof, a little tap into the tire barriers, and that's unfortunate and a bit sloppy.
Very sloppy, I'm afraid. Joshua Chinsky was driving as if Passaggero wasn't even there, I'm afraid. And he will get in trouble for that, you would think, at the end of the day. Of course, the stewards will be taking a look at everything after the fact, and that will be one thing on their list, I have no doubt. Meanwhile, this is the battle he's left in his way. Kwok Nin won't mind because he wasn't involved and he's gained a place, so he won't be losing any sleep over that. But there he goes down the inside. That was earlier than I was expecting the move to be made, in towards turn 4, and now they're going to have to go so slowly. It's an awkward section of corners on your own, and when you're going side by side, it's made even worse. Kwok Nin doesn't make the place, he does lose time, and invites Tyler Graff to the party again.
I mean, hey, that's still 1+ spot since the last lap for Kwok Nin. Tyler Graff, another driver who is in need of a good showing here tonight, was a championship competitor last season. Nin's going to have, well, I thought he was going to have a really good turn in through that corner, but it just seemed that he didn't get that wheel kind of turned to the right hard enough. Lost some time there, and goodness me, this is look at how much separation is between Chinsky and Osborne.
Yeah.
4 seconds there, and this is not at all what Nin wanted to see. I mean, you're not going to win a championship with 2 of these kinds of performances, even if you're running in the top 10 of a 40-plus car field.
No, I mean, he's done well so far to be second in the standings, and 50 points. He's been on the podium twice, hasn't he? Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not a disaster. This could become his drop week, but it puts an awful lot of pressure on you, doesn't it? With 6 rounds to go, to say, you know, I can't finish off the podium again is quite difficult.
Right, as we see Christopher Rines in a replay here. Wow, that was a sloppy looking incident as well. Not quite sure what happened there for that to go the way it did, but you're absolutely right. You know, like 1 8th place finish, 1 7th place finish, whatever you want to say, is not an absolute detriment to your championship battle. But we've seen how good the eventual champions of these PRL series are throughout the season. There's not much room for mistakes, and one mistake, you do get that mulligan in the form of a drop week. But more than that, I mean, you're playing with fire and you're putting a lot of pressure early on, as you said, to make podium finishes happen week in, week out. If you can't make that happen, you're not going to be champion. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and Jim Feliz is one of the best at getting that done as well. So it's a difficult day to have for Kwok Nin, although it's not over just yet. There's the battle. Meanwhile, this could provide him with a bit of hope for 6th place with Tony Costello and Israel Osborne. Still, of course, needs to get past Joshua Chinsky first, but even so, if these guys continue with this, then maybe things will get a little bit better for him. About a third of the way done with this race, by the way, already. That's flown by very quickly indeed. And I'm glad to report, actually, that my fears about a lack of overtaking have not been realised just yet, because we've seen plenty going on in this first third of the race. But it's the middle third where things do tend to get a little bit more difficult. Now maybe things will begin to settle down after the start, which was relatively calm, actually, for the leaders, but has only steadily ramped up with the incidents inside of the top 10. And well, if that continues, then it will remain interesting. But if this now single files out, it could be bad news for Kwok Nin as he still tries to find a way past Joshua Chinsky for 8th place.
You know, I don't think you need overtakes to make a race exciting. You can have close battling and opportunities that are seen, like right here, right? You're right there. Kwok Nin is right at Chinsky, was looking to make a move down the inside. Even if he can't get by him for a long amount of time, or even at all, to me, this is quite exciting. He's trying to find different grooves, different places that he can make the move. You know, it's a different type of excitement from back and forth racing. It's still good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, by the way. It's I get a bit frustrated with people complaining about races, so I won't. There is the split screen, having a look at 2 parts of the racetrack at once. One looking very much darker than the other, actually. This is the thing with the new iRacing system, isn't it? The first half of the lap, if you like, it's very dark, and then when you get to the end, it looks a bit brighter over here. I don't think I'm going mental. It just does look a bit brighter towards the end, and there you go over the line. They're also looking a bit nicer again, but as soon as they get to this first end of the racetrack, where you're in Sector 1, suddenly looks a bit more gloomy, but there you go. As I said earlier, it's not going to rain. We're not fearing the weather here today, at least not the fixed series racers are not worrying about it anyway, as we go through the 35 minutes here, and I think the drivers will be pretty pleased about that. It's just throwing so many different other variables that some of these drivers will certainly not want to see, and they won't be seeing today.
Yeah, 100%. It's gonna rain later on in the sprint series race here. It's gonna rain at some other races in the fixed series as the season progresses. Not many, but it will be a roll of the dice. That's another thing that we kind of have to talk about here when it comes to drop weeks. If you put the pressure on yourself to basically have your drop week already taken in race number 3, what do you do when the rain comes into play? That's even worse, because the pressure has been turned up to 1,000, just like if you squeezed a hose and all of a sudden the water pressure increases tenfold.
Yeah, but what if he has a really good day in the rain and then all of a sudden he's laughing, dancing in the rain maybe?
This is true. You could be singing in the rain or...
singing in the... Is that the one? Sorry, I've got it.
No, you're good. You're good. We can be singing in the rain. It's a glorious feeling.
Yes.
And,
maybe
yeah,
both.
I mean, yeah, you know. You can dance while singing. I feel like if you're singing... If you're singing and you're not dancing, are you really enjoying yourself?
Well, this is true. I didn't really want to start this conversation, but anyway, I've accidentally done it. So there you go. Here's the battle for third. In the meantime,
we're on a microphone, my friend. I mean, if you can't do some karaoke and dance a little bit, then what's the point of life?
Maybe we should wait till after the broadcast, in case people turn off, because that wouldn't be ideal. On board with, oh dear, and Azrael Osborne's going to get a place here. Tony Costello has got that all wrong. Into the braking zone for turn 8.
Not yet.
Beyond the outside for the next corner, but it's a great chance for Osborne. These are the chances you've got to seize at this time in the race.
Yeah, 100%. We were just talking about it earlier. Once the mistakes happen, it's a place that you can possibly take. And I think that Costello did just enough to get back on the circuit and not lose the position to Osborne. But you can see Osborne looking all over, trying to make a move happen here as they go through these right-handed kinks. A little bit more of a sharper angle, a better apex taken by Osborne here. Is he going to be able to make a move? Not into this corner. He's going to have to just stay within a couple car lengths, but he did lose some in that final sector right here.
Well, that was a real chance. I think you've got to take those chances if you're...
Oh, no.
Osborne there. Oh, dear. Another Corvette off. It's Waldo Warden. Recently won his first ever... say recently. Has only got one PRL victory to his name in the history of this in the history of this, what would you call it, organisation, league racing thing, and that hasn't come into GT3, I'm afraid. It's not going to happen today for him, as he's pulled off the road. Not the only Corvette we've seen in a bit of trouble here today, but there's the gap now. Tony Costello has put another 3/4 of a second back into Israel Osborne there very quickly. As I say, I think you've got to take those chances in this time of the race. You're not going to get many better than that.
Yeah, you really aren't going to get much better than that, but, you know, kudos to Tony Costello at still forcing Osborne to have to make the move on his own merit and not just inherit it off of his mistake. It looks like Costello has done more than enough to show that he still has the speed. It's still about consistency, right? As we get a replay here of what happened to Waldo Walden, or is this...
Just pull off the road there.
I mean, hey, sometimes you want to get a good view of the racing action.
Yeah, I don't think he's stopping to hop over the barriers and take some pictures. I think he's in a bit more trouble than that, I'm afraid. But that looks like the end of his day, I'm afraid to say. Only halfway in just now. And as we get to that stage, we look backwards from Evan Mackay and see Jim Feliz in the background. The SRT yellow driver homing in on Mackay here. And, well, this is a big battle between these two. The front two Porsches in this race look like they're not going to settle this one by driving around single file. They might well settle it on the circuit. And we're getting to that pit stop window as well. A very dangerous window, I think, for the leader, because you don't quite know what the driver overtaking you is going to do. I think it was Brett Thurman we just saw into the pit lane. Now, we've reached the halfway mark in the race, so it's not too early to pit. It could be time very shortly for Jim Felice to do something different and try and get through on Evan McKay without the use of an on-track overtake.
The pit window, to me, opened up with 22 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go in this race. You just need to add the amount of fuel you'll need to end the race on, which is only going to take 6 to 10 seconds worth. But when you're within a second of the car in front, that can be all the difference. You also might have to run into the issue of maybe underfueling it compared to your opponents and then having to save. And hey, maybe that's a strategy, knowing how hard it is to pass here at Misano. Maybe you do underfuel to make the move to get in front and then save and almost back up your opponent as you're doing so. But over the course of the last lap, as we're seeing another lap here, on lap 11, McKay lost a half second to Jim Felice as they crossed the line there, lost almost 2/10 to Jim Felice. He is turning up the pressure right here for sure.
Well, yeah, this is the eternal debate. Is Felice turning up the pressure, or is McKay just losing a bit of speed here? It's maybe both. But we'll wait and see as the other championship rival, at least in the top two right now, Kwoknin pulls into the pit lane. Now he's got to do something here to try and vault ahead of those who he was trying to do and failing to do on the circuit. Joshua Chinsky being chief among them. Israel Osborne also exits the pit lane now, followed fairly closely by the man you can see on your screen there, Kwoknin in the Corvettes. There he goes out of the pit lane now. Not actually that far behind Osborne there, as they get out of this excruciatingly long pit lane into a quite precarious position on the racetrack again. We'll have to wait a few moments for that battle to settle out. Will this one be settled on the racetrack? Maybe it is soon time for Jim Felice to do something in the pit lane.
I mean, we're looking at another 2/10 already, and we're not even done this lap. So over the course of the last 3 laps, it's around a second gap that had disappeared between McKay and Felice. Felice is doing all he can to turn the pressure up and try and force McKay into a mistake. The question is, who blinks first? Is the undercut going to be the way to go? Do they both follow each other? No, they stay out for at least one more lap. And the other thing about this pit lane, you do skip over the 1-2 complex right here. So you skip this entire portion. You've got a bit of a kink that you got to deal with. It's a bit narrow on pit exit, but you still skip that.
Yeah.
See, it washes you out into turn 3.
Yeah, doesn't it feel though to you like you're on the pit lane for limiter for ages too long? Feels to me as if
feels that way.
But I guess they're trying not to make it an advantage to come into pit lane, because then you really are shortening the distance by some distance, and that's a bit of an issue that you need to avoid. So I guess that's why you have to stay on the pit limiter for so long. But I guess they also don't want you coming into turn 3 with more speed than the guys on the actual racetrack do. That would be a big problem too. So there you go. There's probably 2 good reasons for it.
Montreal.
Well, I mean,
yeah. If we're being honest, there at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, you do have a faster speed kind of coming in or coming out of the pits than drivers do coming around 1 into that narrow hairpin.
It's true, but generally, when you're going around turn 2 at Montreal, you're not generally going quite so wide into the pit exit lane as you are here, where you certainly are using
also
all the
on
road.
cold tires, you know. So.
Yep, it's very true. And as you can see from those track conditions there, it's not particularly ideal for the tyres in terms of warming up, although they won't be burning away. 84 Fahrenheit, that's mid-20s, late 20s for those of you on this side of the Atlantic, up in the time of the morning, as we've got a race leader into the pit lane. It's time for the real battle to begin. Evan McKay has been holding on for a while now from Jim Felice, but he can't do so any longer. He wants to forego Jim Felice trying to pit before him and undercutting him. Instead, McKay wants to be the one into pit lane first, and he will do so by pulling into the last pit box and hoping this outlap is good enough for him to retain the lead.
I don't mind this move from Evan McKay. We'll see how long he is stationary in pit lane. Looks like a 11.4 second stop. That seems quite long.
You think? I don't know. It's been okay compared to some of the others we've seen so far. I'll say that.
No, it's quite. Yeah, it's.
It's a bit long. Yeah.
Well, here's the
it's
question.
a little bit on the long side. There you go.
Ah, man, that is quite the long stop, and now it's all about the outlap right here. McKay doesn't have to worry about the pressure from in behind, but also Jim Feliz, I presume, is going to come in here, right? Usually that's what's going to happen here. I think he's going to come in here, and if he does, we're going to get a really good look. I think it's going to be a lot closer than we assume, but Feliz does not have to worry as much about underfueling the car because he has gone one extra lap.
Yep. And so 8-second lead is going to evaporate very quickly, but that's not the important gap. It's to Evan McKay that we're looking at here. Meanwhile, it's Roy Osborne just ahead of Tyler Graff, who's actually got ahead of Quacken in. It's a disaster for the championship contender. So he's gone in early to try and jump a couple of drivers and jump up the order. He's actually lost places here. And so this is a real disaster for Quacken, who's turning this day into a bit of an ordeal, I'm afraid. And all of a sudden, his second place in the championship too, Evan McKay, will be coming under pressure. Into the pit lane then for Jim Feliz. He's about halfway through his pit stop already. Is it going to be anywhere near the 11 seconds?
Oh,
absolutely not. It's 10 seconds for Jim Feliz. This is going to be a rejoin with the 5 car in the lead, you would say. There out the pit lane goes William Fenson. Just up ahead, you can see the Porsche. There, through the bottom of the shot goes Evan McKay. And does he get back ahead here? Has his undercut strategy worked? Was his lap good enough? Was Feliz good enough? Nowhere near. What happened to Feliz on that in-lap there? Because his pit stop was so much shorter. But for some reason, he's lost a lot of time. In fact, his lane time was 0.7 of a second longer. I wonder whether he missed his box. He did something along the way. But Jim Feliz has turned a 1.4 second gain somehow into a loss of roughly the same margin.
That's quite incredible. I mean, they were just 3-4 tenths apart when McKay first dipped into pit lane, now a second and a half. You're absolutely right. That second and a half gap would have put them pretty much equal once again, but it was the lane time that absolutely destroyed the chance of Jim Feliz getting in front. We'll have to get a closer look, if we can, at what exactly happened there, because, I mean, non-stationary time, if we're trying to do the math here, it was 36.4 seconds for Evan McKay and 37.5. So 1.1 seconds longer for Jim Feliz and not stationary. I mean, he had to have missed the box.
I think so. I think that's one of the reasons. Second of all, why it's baffling is the fact that because he did an overcut, he would have actually had less fuel when they were going against one another on that lap apart there. So he should have been faster there too. There may have been a mistake on the racetrack as well. That's entirely possible, but it would be uncharacteristic. So that doesn't make any sense at all. But what it does look like at the moment is that he may well be quicker than Evan McKay. I think he is quicker, in fact. As being evidenced right now, has he got enough time in those 8.5 minutes to actually make something happen here? I reckon they've still got 6 laps to go, and well, it's looking like he'll catch, certainly, but will he be able to pass or not? That's the question.
Well, I mean, for sure, as we get a replay here of Jim Feliz's coming out of the pit lane, and it doesn't look abnormal there. He just does not have any. It had to happen coming in or coming out of the box. Okay, so let's talk about this. If there's 5 to 6 laps left in this race, we saw that 1.5 gap come down very quickly. It took 3 laps for it to come down to half a second between Jim Feliz and Evan McKay coming up to the pit cycle. That rate seems to continue on. It was 1.5 seconds. McKay is starting to drop just a little bit, and now around this corner it's dipped below 1 second. Obviously, that'll fluctuate a little bit more, but you can definitely see there is some more speed for Jim Feliz, who is absolutely chasing him right now. Evan McKay, that is, and I mean, look at that. You can already tell that gap has come down considerably already. So, do I think there's enough time? Absolutely, I do think there's enough time, but it's hard to pass here. Going to have to be decisive.
And also, it might need to be a bit quicker than that last lap. Just 2 tenths of a second gained. And there's not going to be many more than 4 or 5 laps to go. Well, there aren't going to be any more than 4 or 5 laps to go, based on the numbers we've got at the moment. This is Chris Treiber. Oh dear, that's a big hit on the wall. Even the very sturdy Ford can't sustain that impact, I'm afraid. So that's an incident. Actually, I'm a bit surprised we haven't seen as much of that so far today already in the final corner. It's a pretty deadly final curb and a pretty close wall to swallow you up as well.
Yeah, 100%. I was making a noise there because Evan McKay went way wide in that previous corner. This gap has come down almost completely between he and Jim Feliz. Another 3/10 bitten out of it, and we're not even done this lap. So yeah, there's going to be a race for the lead. There is a race for the lead right now. Before it gets more intense, I want to give a quick shout out to Pete Magea, doing a really solid job. AM class leader, 12th overall in this race, around 5 seconds in front of Buck Hamilton, who's P2 in the AM class, a second in front of Jared Deploy, who rounds out that AM class podium.
I think there's been an incident between Dale Pedersen and William Fenton, because Pedersen has just apologised to him. Not entirely sure why. I don't think it was anything too major, because William Fenton is still going and still running 5th in the race at the moment. He's the best placed of the Ferraris in the field. In fact, he's one of the relative few, actually, in the GT3 fixed series. Change inside the top 10 as Quacknin finally gets through on Isaiah Osborne, but I think the story there is Osborne dropping down the field. He's also got behind Tyler Graff, so I'm not sure what happened to Osborne at all, really, but Nin's into 7th at least. He's recovered pretty well from the pit lane mistake, really. I'm not sure, again, not really sure where he lost all that time himself, but he lost places, and he's gained them back again now.
Yeah, he definitely has gained them back. Kwak Nin in 7th place as we look at Dale Peterson.
Oh, no.
What happened here?
No.
That was weird. Peterson was way off throttle.
He's trying to get out of the way as far as his message goes in the Discord. He said, he apologised, basically.
What do you want to do, though, when you're a car that wants to get out of the way? Be predictable. That's the only thing. Feliz taking a peek down the inside of McKay. Hesitation. Lap traffic in front.
Well, throw everything else out the window. We've got a race on for the lead now. Evan McKay has got 3 very long laps to hold off Jim Feliz here. This is going to be about 12 kilometres to the finish, but it's going to feel like about 12,000, I'm afraid, for Evan McKay, because he's got Jim Feliz right behind, searching for another PRL GT3 win. Evan McKay's never won in the PRL before. He'll become the 437th different winner across all the series if he can just hang on for another few laps. But what a task he has, including through lap traffic, to hold off Jim Feliz.
Great job by those 2 cars in the back of the field there. That was both Scott Jeffries as well as Nick Bruno. They are fighting for position right now. Kudos, though, to let these leaders battle it out here.
Fantastic, and it's not going to be the only 2 drivers to have to let these guys do so. Look at the weaving and moving around in the mirrors there, down in towards turn 8. Jim Feliz feeling like he's gone very early on the brakes there. Has he got a slow down penalty? It looks like he may well have done. Has that just settled our race leader here in the dying moments of this race? 1.3 seconds is the gap. It wasn't obvious, really, that he went across the track limits, actually, but he must have done, and he's lost valuable time.
He lost time, but it's certainly not over. We've seen that gap come down by an incredible amount from Jim Feliz in this race alone, across multiple races in this short season already. It's not over, but McKay has just been given some valuable breathing room, coming to 2 laps to go here.
Absolutely, 1 second in 2 laps and a pass. Not sure whether this is going to be possible for Jim Feliz as he searches for another win in PRL GT3 competition. Stay within the white lines now, Evan McKay. I think he was worrying about that a little bit too much at the final turn as he lost a whole host of time. What's that Feliz's lap time looking like that time round? Not good, I would imagine, as it's a 36.6. That's a good 2 seconds away, very nearly, from his best lap of the day. Evan McKay searching for his first win, as I've said, and it doesn't it look like he's searching for his first win as well? He looks like he's looking over his shoulder far too much here, and maybe mirror driving too much. He's losing time at a rate that he can't really sustain to the end here.
Well, to me, it says a little bit of pressure and inexperience in PRL competition. He must have won a lot coming into it. You wouldn't be able to get P1 or potentially fight for it or fight for a championship if you don't have experience in numerous high-level racing leagues across iRacing, as we get also a look at Pete Majea, the leader in the AM class here. Great job from him, great performance from him. But at the same time, when you're searching for the first win in PRL competition, that is a very stark difference than other leagues and other series when you're searching for that.
Certainly is. And okay, certainly having to look over his shoulder a bit more than Pete Major is having to down there. Up to 12th place overall, which does matter, of course. The AMs do score points in the same system as the pros do, so that's worth bearing in mind when we're looking at the championship standings later, and the fact that Jared Deploy is going to take a little bit of a hit on the championship lead there too, Pete Major, but it won't be enough for him to lose his championship lead because he gained plenty of points on him in those first 2 rounds. White flag is out, less than a minute remaining. This will be the last lap of the race coming up now. Speaking of championships, Kwok Nin has got 1 lap to pass Tony Costello here. This looks more likely than the Jim Felice pass for the lead.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Kwok Nin, P6 is not as bad of a day as P9, P10, and hey, potential. There is potential for Kwok Nin to still be right there in this championship fight. Felice should still hold the championship lead after this race, but it definitely has come down between he, McKay, and Kwok Nin as the 3 potential championship contenders for this season.
Really has. Maybe early to say, but it's not a long season at just 9 rounds. So you've got to get off to these good starts. Kwok Nin just threatening in towards turn 8. He'll have a little bit of traffic up ahead there as well, and they're not in that battle with those guys, by the way. Meanwhile, Evan McKay is doing a very good job at the front of this race. He's led from start to finish, but that doesn't really tell the whole story at all. Jim Felice has been close and then not close and close again. He's weathered each and every storm. McKay looks like he's on his way to a victory. We've seen so many different winners down the years in the PRL, but Evan McKay has not been one of them until today, where he'll add his name to a list of 437 names who have now won a PRL race. Evan McKay comes through the final corner and wins at Misano in the GT3 Fix Series, holding off Jim Felice by just 3/4 of a second in the end.
Man, that's awesome. You see the smile, the look of relief on Evan's face right there. He had to earn it. He really did. You know, Jim Felice made a couple too many mistakes in this race, and Evan McKay, give him credit. He might not have been the fastest on a single lap compared to Felice, but he was the first to cross the line. He was the most consistent as it went on. Pete Majea will cross the line and win the AM class. Kudos to him, finishing 12th overall. He'll get the points for finishing in 12th, but because of the separation between he and Hamilton, 3 positions, that's good for the point standings.
Certainly is. There is Luke Wallace as well, will be joining the front 2 on the podium, the only non-Porsche indeed to make it. And there's the fire-spitting Caleb Lemon in his McLaren. I know I said I'd mention it more often, but I'm doing it now. What a wonderful sight it is to still have that car on the grid. No Ford this time round. No Ford Mustang, no Ford GT, excuse me. We've got the Mustang these days, but we do have the rather retro McLaren, and I, for one, am a big fan of that as they make their way down the back straight towards the end of the lap after a good 35 minutes of racing. Stay with us, of course. We've got sprint series racing coming up in a few moments' time, but before then, the results of this opening race of the day. Ed McKay holds on from Jim Felice. 6 seconds was back to Luke Wallace, joining them on the podium. Caleb Lemon and William Fenson round out the top 5. Tony Costello holds off Kwok Nin, who takes a bit of a hit in the points, with Tyler Graff, Israel Osborne and Brett Furman finishing just behind him, but generally being a nuisance to him most of the day. In fact, Andrew Venaro finishes 11th with Pete Major in 12th, winning the AM class. Andrew Trickett and Sully Sad put a couple of cars between Majer and Buck Hamilton in second, gaining Majer a couple of points on his championship rival Jared Deploy, who finishes on the podium as well. Colin McKenzie finishes 17th, better Mark Elliott, Jay Steffi and Regan Chandler. In 21st, it's Sean Provost in the first of a couple of Mustangs. David Bush the third is 22nd, ahead of Brett Pancari. Dan Eldon and Robert Jeffries round at the top 25. Getting to those who are finishing over a minute down now, Christopher Ryan's in 26th, but Barry Cochrane, Joey Costello, Ryan Chandler and Mark Kalin, who came from the back after not qualifying. Kevin Berquist was the final driver on the lead lap. Nick Bruno and Scott Jeffries went one lap down at the end there, and we saw them get rather nicely out the way for the leaders. Chris Tiber finished in 34th after crashing into the wall at the final corner. Shedian Stanjevuk finished 35th after an early spin in his Lamborghini. David Morse and Joshua Chinsky 36th and 37th in the two Corvettes, with Ian Cabana and Dale Patterson, who retired rather late on. It was Waldo Walden 40th ahead of Vincent Giroux, Jared Keane, Felix Feliz, Sean Mulholland and Joseph Carnes, who didn't really get going in that race. In fact, the last three didn't at all. So there you go. 42 on the grid there, and most of them getting to the end as well. Let's chat to a few of these drivers, starting with Evan McKay, who joins us now. Welcome in, Evan. Good to have you with us. How does it feel to have held off Jim there right at the very end and taken a PRL race win?
Oh man, it feels great. I knew coming in it'd be all about qualifying and getting on pole, and I managed to snag that from him. So all I had to do was keep him behind me, and make sure I had a good pit stop, and yeah, it all went well for me.
Certainly did. I mean, it was a pit stop cycle that confused us, to be honest with you. We saw Jim Felice take a 1.4 seconds shorter pit stop than you, and I don't know if you realised that at the time, but his lane time was somehow longer, and he somehow managed to double his margin, in fact maybe more than double his margin to yourself on the exit of those pit stops. First of all, what was the idea behind coming in before him? Second of all, how did you see the pit stops working out from your position in the seat?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just had to pit because I had no more fuel. So he was probably doing some lifting to save some fuel for an extra lap, I guess. But I'm not sure why I would have been faster on the whole lane, but shorter in the pit stop. I guess he would have been filling up less fuel, but maybe I just entered the pit faster than him. Got down to 60. Faster than him, I guess.
We couldn't figure it out either, to be honest with you. So I'm not expecting answers particularly, but yeah, it was a puzzling one. We'll ask him in a couple of moments' time. But last of all, congratulations from us, Evan, on your win, and thanks for chatting to us at the end.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much, Evan McKay there, the winner of tonight's race at Misano in the GT3 Fix Series. Next up is Jim Felice, who was runner-up, and he's with Dylan.
Yeah, Jim, a really solid run from you, but just a couple minor mistakes that kept you from potentially getting that win. First of all, I got to ask, it was a second quicker in your box during your pit stop, but you lost that time while moving in pit lane. Did something happen getting into the box?
Yeah, I think I pushed my luck a little bit on the overcut there and actually ran out of fuel on pit lane, so kind of sputtered into the box a little bit, lost some time there, which was a little unfortunate, but P2 is still a pretty good result.
It's one of those results, right? You've gotten all three podiums, a win in the first three races of the season, but you still do have two close competitors, both in Evan and Kwok Nin. You feel like you still have what it takes to continue to put in these performances, especially, you've got 6 more races, 5 of them you can take as a drop. It's not like you're really under too much pressure yet. You don't have to worry about the drop yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a really exciting and competitive season, especially when you start factoring in those drops. I think there's some other guys that maybe had a little bit of bad luck in the first couple races that are awfully quick. I think you put, Luke Wallace in that conversation. Tyler Graff, Isaiah Osborne, some of those guys that were at the front last season as well, they could sneak back into things once the drop weeks are factored in. So, I think the top 10 is going to be really, really close and hopefully make for some good racing this season.
All right. Anyone you want to give a shout out to? Any partners?
Yeah, I just want to thank the team. I think we got a lot of good practice in at this track. It's a new one, so not a lot of people had seen it, and we had a lot of SRT cars up front tonight, so that was really good to see.
All right, Jim. Congratulations on P2. Excited to see what you do in the final 2/3 of the season.
All right, sounds good.
And after a while, I started saying, maybe I should fuel save, try to get them in the pits, but after doing that, I just couldn't get my tires back up.
How much of an issue are the tyres going to be over the course of the season, and were they tonight indeed? Because I couldn't help but notice in this sort of summer season where we're going over, this is the season where we're going over the hottest months in the year, in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, where most of the circuits are. And I couldn't help but notice that most of the races are starting really early in the morning or quite late in the evening. And so the proper high temperatures have sort of been taken away from us a little bit at times this season. But how did it affect the tyres? Did you feel like you were still struggling towards the end?
Yeah, definitely struggling towards the end. I think these high temperatures will just keep drivers from over-rotating the wheel and overusing the tires. I think really whoever's going to win is going to be whoever can manage their tires the best each week and push at the end.
Well, congratulations on another podium tonight, Luke, and thanks for coming to chat to us.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks very much, Luke Wallace, third place here tonight in the Fix Series. And in AM, we've got Pete Major, who is standing by with us too. Welcome in, Pete. Good to have you with us. A win in AM here tonight for yourself, closing that early championship advantage that Jared Deploy was able to open up. Again, we didn't get to see much of you either, to be honest with you, even though you were in the lead. It was a pretty comfortable lead for a lot of that race, but how was it out for yourself? Doesn't look like he can hear us, or we can't hear him. So that's not good. That's not good news. We'll try and get him, but we're not too far away from sprint series action here, so we can't wait for too long, unfortunately. But I'm not sure either he can't hear us or we can't hear him, or both. But neither's good. I can see him musing himself and trying to figure things out at the moment. But it doesn't look like we're able to get through to him just for now. It's a great drive from him though, Dylan, in that race there. And as I mentioned during the results, a couple of pro drivers between himself and his main rivals, which helps you in the points.
Yeah, absolutely. He did a very solid job, and I don't know if we've had an AM class driver finish in the top 10 yet. Pete did not finish in the top 10, obviously, with that 12th place finish, but still high up in the grid in the top 25% or so, at least just outside of it, of this big overall field. And just a solid drive, not too loud, kind of a quiet one, didn't have too much competition around him. He did a really solid job there. But last one more time, Pete, you got a copy?
Doesn't look
That's
like
a
it.
no.
Unfortunately, no. That's a no. So we won't be able to get to him. But congratulations to him, nevertheless, on that win. Change of weather conditions, by the way, as we go forward to the GT3 Sprint Series. That was quite abrupt, wasn't it? But look at the torrential rain we've got going on here. This is going to be exciting. Welcome along to the GT3 Sprint Series here, part of the Precision Racing League for the third season in 2024. You're watching RaceSpotTV with myself, Ian O'Leary, and Dylan Coyle with Ramiro Agustin Cisneros. So very excited, Ramiro, doing the cameras because Argentina are tuning up. Sorry. Sorry, Canadian. Canada, I should say. Canadians. Anyway, we'll steer clear from football for the next 40 minutes or so. That's what we've got coming up. Another 40-minute race after this qualifying session is complete. Let's have a look at the championship standings after just a couple of rounds. And if you thought Fixed was close, then this is arguably closer. Jeggery Host is got 3 points over second, Rob Clark, and 4 points over Kevin Cantonio in third. Dominic Oliveira is only 10 points away in fourth, with Aidan Young rounding out the top five. Chris Soyoung, Fernando Jaquez and Emmett Lindqvist round out a trio of drivers who are not attached to any of the teams, followed by SCR's pairing of Brandon Tabone and Martin Crisp rounding out the Pro Drivers' Championship. It's Peter Muller who's leading in an even closer AM Drivers' Championship. Just 1 point separate him and Rob Campbell. It's Devin Brock in third, ahead of Chris Stewart and Drake Smith to round out the top 5. Dakota Knapp is in 6th place, ahead of Jason Hodgson, who is the only privateer in the top 7. Jason Finch is 8th, ahead of Thomas Rep, Christopher rounding out the top 10. And then you've got the teams. Solpec Precision Racing Gold are 40 points ahead of Dota Sport and SCR, with the other Solpec team in 4th at a Fiercely Forward. SRTE and Unit Sim Sports are in 6th place ahead of Black Eagles, SCR 2, followed by Heartland Autosport Yellow and Upfront Motorsports. So that is the current standing of the standings. Does that make sense? As
Current
we get
standing
the
of the
third
standings.
round underway. Yeah, standing of the standings is okay.
Yeah,
3.5 minutes or so to go. Track temperature obviously lower. Overcast, I think, is a stretch. I would call it rain, but there you go. That's what our graphics have gone
I mean,
for.
I don't know about you, but liquid falling from the sky typically
rain.
to me says rain. And can we just, before we get into all this sprint and discussion and rain discussion, did Luke Wallace say it was hot earlier?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
Luke, that was a pretty cool 84-degree track temperature.
I was going to say, for a track temperature, that is quite cool, yeah. I think we've had about 4 days of 2024 so far in England above 84 Fahrenheit in air temperature, but that's different.
No, I've been, there's been a lot of days that have been above 90 here in North Carolina in the United States, so.
That's
Rip.
Depressing news, that really. It's just muggy and horrible. I'm sat here sweating in 16 Celsius.
Is it really where...
It's about 55 Fahrenheit and I'm sweating. Anyway.
Apologies to bring in some more football conversation, but is it really going to come home to that kind of weather?
I think it is, yeah. We'll have the parade in the rain if we get one.
That was pretty confident before the confidence lacked.
Yeah, pretty inevitable. If we get a parade, it'll be in the rain. Anyway, let's talk about actual rain on the racetrack. Gregory Hobson currently leading the field by a quarter of a second to this man, actually, Carl Modoff, who is in second. And I wonder how notable, or indeed not notable, it is that the front row is a Lamborghini. Probably not very much, but it may be more notable that they are of the same team more than anything else. Delta Sport, of course, running their cars in a bit of a different looking livery compared to what Delta Sport are used to. Plenty of manufacturer variety again, and I do wonder in this qualifying session just how much of it will be actually track position, as it normally is, and how much of it will be actually learning this circuit and what to drive in.
You know, that's a really good point. I feel like if you have the opportunity to get laps, you should always take it, especially in the rain, so you're not hydroplaning like that cool drift wasn't efficient. How about that? Nonetheless, if you're not getting, I hate the term perfect practice, or that practice makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect practice. You're always going to be learning. You're always going to be struggling. And in the rain, it's a constant changing battle in iRacing to learn how the track evolves when the dry line comes into play. There's not going to be a dry line here for the most part. It's going to be raining the entire time. You got to learn how to deal with it. Keep your wheels off the curbs. That's going to be important when you're in a braking zone, and just make 0 mistakes. That's easier said than done.
It certainly is. It's easy to line up on one of these races and think, I'm not going to make any mistakes here. I'm just going to be calm and cool and collected. But it's a lot more difficult in practice. Traditionally, the Porsches are very good around here, but Marc-Andre Caron, the first of them for now. He's also a quarter of a second behind Gregory Hobson, the championship leader, who's currently the pole sitter also. And that's another of the issues. Look at the spray here. And at some point in this race, I'm going to want to go back and look at the start, sort of an onboard from the midfield, because I bet some of those in the midfield are not going to see very much of the start, to be honest, and they're going to have to watch RaceSpotTV afterwards to find out what happened.
Oh, that's a great point right there. It's going to be rough for a lot of those drivers in the midfield to do much of anything. And it's 42 cars are registered for this race. I believe only 2 at the start will have a good view of what's going on.
Yeah, I think so. and us, of course, because we've got all the cameras available to us. And
yes.
It's not quite going to look so bad from the slightly heightened trackside cameras that we've got, and we'll be able to enjoy all of the action, and there will for sure be a lot of it. Just one more point, by the way, before we get to the grid. Devin Brock is a long way ahead of his AM rival. He's 11th in the standings in qualifying at the moment. He's got 6 drivers between himself and Thomas Rep, who's second, and then just behind in 18th is Miles Brown. So that's a very big advantage early for Devin Brock, who qualifies 11th overall, 1.2 seconds off the pole time. Slightly hesitating to call it the pole time because we got a big shock, or I got a big shock, towards the end of that previous qualifying session that maybe ended up winning Evan McKay the race there. I mean, it certainly contributed, that early track position that he will have gained from that late qualifying lap in the opening race of the day. But we're not going to see any of those such surprises, I don't think, he says, as Marc-Andre Garon makes his way down the back straight now. Maybe he is indeed on a lap here right at the very end. And I mentioned Porsches are always strong in this weather. He is indeed the only driver inside the top 10 who is even on a lap and improving at the moment.
Yeah, and hey, maybe Marc-Andre Garon, who already put down a pretty solid lap time, has something more in that Porsche machine. You know, Porsches are known to be a little bit more nimble, a little bit more agile, but at the same time, it can snap around very quickly. I feel like it's a preferred car to use in the wet here, and as he comes around the final corner, I'll have to nail this, and I think he did just that. Keeps the tires on the course. The power down. It's an okay time, but it's not anywhere close to what he needed. Hey, more practice is not a bad thing. Certainly not, especially in these conditions. That's what some of these drivers will have just used that qualifying session for, to be honest with you. But Gregory Hobson certainly wasn't. He was taking pole position alongside his teammate Carl Modov in a Delta Sport lockout. It's Marc-Andre Garon and Dominic Olivier sharing row 2 ahead of Rob Clark and Chris Soong, who will be 6th. Kevin Cantonio 7th ahead of J.R. Williams, with Nick Ludeke and Jaime Gonsalves rounding out the top 10. And then the first of the AM drivers, a great drive from Devin Brock to get 11th ahead of Kevin Simpson. 13th went to Aidan Young for Fiercely Forward, with Jack Hedgecock in 14th. Onugene is in 15th ahead of Martin Crisp, who's been a championship contender of this series in the past. Thomas Rep and Miles Brown share row 9, second, third in AM. They've got a bit of a gap back, with Brandon Tabone and Noah Anderson are the next drivers behind them, followed by the first 4 in the AM standings. Drake Smith. Emmett Lindqvist is 22nd ahead of Conor Wagner, who is 23rd ahead of Chris Stewart. On the 13th row of the grid, it's Fernando Yaquez alongside David Holland. It's Jason Finch and Ethan Bass next up, who's been shoved out of one Ford and into another for Orbit Motorsport. Aaron Beebe and Peter Moller round out the top 30. Rob Campbell and Dakota Knapp round out row 16, with Max Sheriff and Andrew Lanning. Joshua Pears and Kyle Robertson are 35th and 36th, followed by Dan Moreira, Ryan Braves and Jeff Carollo, the final drivers to a set a time. And in the session also are Sean Dickinson, Jason Allen and Victor Couto, who may well make a start, although as you may well have noticed from the Fix Series race, 3 of those drivers who were in the session didn't make the start of that one, so we'll see what they decide to do. Let's look from the air. I have a feeling we're not going to be because I can't see any. There's the view on the grid, down on the grid. It makes it look very murky and difficult conditions from up here, which of course they are. Yeah, it's definitely murky as can be. Yeah, I guess you could say it's overcast if you just keep it at this angle. And you can't see really the raindrops, but trust us, it's raining 100%. It is windy as well. Now, here's the question. Pit strategy. It changes a little bit because you do have a 60% capacity fuel tank. You had 50% in the last race. You only have 5 minutes more, so realistically, the percentage of the race where the pit window opens would be the same in dry conditions. However, there's the smallest of chances you could maybe make it to the end of this race. If you really start saving right now, because the speeds are going to be lower, It's going to be raining the entire time. You theoretically could maybe save 2 seconds up to maybe a second and a half per lap by coasting, by just taking your foot off the throttle. Maybe you make it to the end. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it's a possibility.
I think it's a much more possibility than you're selling there, to be honest. I think that increase from 60% is very significant. I mean, even in dry conditions, that's going to get you possibly through the fixed race, to be honest with you. Yeah. I think that would get you through the fixed race. Now, this race is only 5 minutes more. What that does allow for is a really wide pit window, which I always really like. But we may get here everybody just not pitting at all if indeed these conditions do slow them down enough. We're going to be going a good 12 or so seconds a lap slower than even fixing. Now, we're used to going quicker in these cars because they've got choice of how to set them up as opposed to the guys we just saw in the first hour of our broadcast tonight. This is very different. They can do what they want here in terms of their setup. They can make it better for these wet weather conditions, but even so, they are slower than the fixed series, which is a really odd feeling. I really think it is possible to save those, what would probably be 3 laps, maybe 4, that they would need to save to get to the end of this race. That's 3 laps compared to dry weather conditions, by the way. Not 3 laps in total, because that would be too far. But you, as you said, you will naturally save fuel in conditions because you can't go as quick.
Right, so we'll see if any drivers maybe make it obvious in the beginning based on how they're running, because if there's any in the top 10 that try it, I think it'll be very obvious. But I also don't think it's maybe the best case scenario for a driver running in the top 10 to try it. I think that's kind of a risky situation that if you're in the back and if you're in the midfield, you might do that. I don't know. I just know that I would feel more comfortable going flat out the entire time. Because if you can't save it the way you need it to be saved and you just wasted 30 seconds by attempting to save it, you've hurt yourself.
Yeah, well, I'll go out on a limb then and say it's going to be the North in this race that they're going to go to the end. That more than half will do it. We'll see who's right at the end of the day. Into the final corners they go then. And welcome along to everyone to RaceSpotTV as we get the PRL's GT3 Sprint Series to the 1/3 mark in this 3rd season of 2024. It's wet weather conditions for the first time this season. 40 minutes of survival and sensational action coming up here from Misano. It's a good start already from the pole sitter Gregory Hobson as they tiptoe in towards turn number 1 for the first time. It's going to be Carmodov who hangs on to second, maybe, as he's challenged by Marc-Andre Caron into the first few corners. He holds on, though, as Dominic Olivier tries to do the same, as Chris Soyoung tries to take the position from him as well on the way in towards turn number 4. Down the inside he goes, indeed. It's more side-by-side in the top 5 or so than we saw through most of the fixed series race. Through they go, finally sorting themselves out now. A good start considering the very difficult conditions.
I am shocked with how clean it has been for the most part. I mean, I don't think it's going to stay that way. Yeah.
Too soon. Far too soon.
I did say I didn't think it was going to stay that way.
Yeah, you were right. On that occasion, there were lots of cars in the wall there in the background. We'll get some replays at the start when it all starts to settle down here in the... But we're only a couple of moments in, and Gregory Hobson's already out to second advantage over his teammate Karl Modov. It is Marc-Andre Caron, Chris Soyoung and Dominic Olivier running out the top 5. And if you want to look at names in the top 5 who've got off to a bad start, then look no further than Olivier, I'm afraid. You can look at maybe your reasons for that. Is it fuel? Is it something else? But there's no doubting he's lost a place and he's lost a lot of time.
Yeah, 100%. And, I mean, look at the AM class, too. Devin Brock in 12th. You got to look back to Chris Stort in 20th to see your next AM class driver, and this is a hornet's nest right here. J.R. Williams. As there's a spin, and it's Aiden Young who's falling back and back and back. Oh boy.
Yeah, that was not good for the fiercely forward driver, I'm afraid. He was not living up to his name, and he was going backwards, I'm afraid to say, down at turn 14. Over the line for the end of the opening lap, and Clark is in 5th place, but he's already 5.8 seconds off the lead. Quite remarkable, as Dominic Olivieri has continued to get his head boxed in here by absolutely everybody. Jack Hedgecox is alongside now and going through as Chris Soyoung is making a pass to Marc-Andre Garon. It's like we qualified in the dry, and all of a sudden these guys are finding their feet in the wet all over again. The amount of positions that have changed here and the amount of drivers who look out of position compared to where they qualified is really abnormal.
Well, I guess in one way, rain is the great equalizer, they say. So if you do have one fast lap in the rain, it's not really... You don't really get that much practice with consistency of fast laps in the rain. As we get a look at the replay here of what happened at, is this the start, I believe?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big bit of contact. Multiple cars involved, and that's potentially day over for a good bit of them.
Yep, I would say so. As the body... Oh dear! Oh, and the bottom of your screen there was a separate crash there, was there? As another car was tipped into the wall. I'm afraid to say that 5 drivers are in the pit lane at the end of that one, including 3 Corvettes, so I can't even begin to tell you which one which was. But somebody got ran over completely at the start there in a similar way to Vincent Géraud did at the pretty opening parts of that race, at that fixed race, of course. As we get the second lap complete, there was a car off in the background there. Not sure which one it was especially, but... I guess, again, everybody's just finding their feet here early on in this 40-minute race. It's going to be, as I said at the start, 40 minutes of survival, really. That's the name of the game, although speed helps too, and the top 2, indeed, have got nearly 4 seconds over the rest.
Yeah, speed certainly helps to separate yourself from the rest of the pack here. In a race like this, however, it's consistency that wins it at the end of the day. And what's pretty surprising is that the top 2 have stayed within a second and a half of each other in the early going here in the first 4 minutes. As you see this, Soyoung as well as Marc-Andre Garon, the 2 others fighting for the podium positionings right here. Do a solid job of staying side by side and keeping it clean.
Well, Soyoung found himself on the curb there, the wet paint and all sorts, and that was never going to end well. It was certainly not going to end in a position for him. So he stays 4th as Garon tries to hang on to that position in 3rd. It's a remarkable gap that there is now developed up to Murdoch and Hofsson, especially considering he was literally hundredths within Murdoch's time in qualifying. To see that gap open up so quickly in the race is really quite astonishing. There's a look at the back straight. And the spread of the field is remarkable also. Right the way back to the last drivers on the lead lap. We've got 34 cars coming by 36 seconds. It's very unusual to have an average gap of 1 second between every car. Meanwhile, the pole sitter and race leader has gone off. Gregory Hofsson has made a mistake there, and he's not only lost the lead, he's lost it by 3 seconds here.
Oh no, that is a disaster for Hofsson. He finished P3 last time out. He got the pole there. He finished P2 the first time out. He started 3rd there. And here's just another example of an unfortunate mistake that ends with him losing a chance at getting the win for the first time this year.
Drake
for now,
Smith
at least.
Was having a difficult time already, and that's him going straight on with pretty much no front end to speak of on that Ford Mustang in towards the final few corners. A very good evening to everyone who's still with us, enjoying the rain action here in the PRL GT3 Sprint Series, like Sir Andre Jameson, Ryan O'Connor and Gabriel Lovato. All good afternoon, evening, or morning indeed, to all of you. Penny Dickens asking replay of the accident. Well, I'd like to ask you which one. We've had a couple of replays so far. Let us know if you want to see another one, I suppose, on whatever it was. But I don't know which one you're referring to be honest, because there's been quite a lot going on so far, as you've seen, I'm sure. Chris Soyoung is the latest driver to be making an attempt, and well, probably the only one to have been making an attempt so far to pass Marc-Andre Garon, and he's having a look now in towards turn number 9. Not going to manage it there, and again has to stay behind. I get the feeling that overtakes might not be quite so difficult to come by as they were in the dry, with the rain falling as it is at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. I feel like the rain just makes people make more mistakes, right? So that leads to opportunities that open up, windows that just get slammed shut more quickly. It's definitely more volatile than these drivers dealing with dry conditions here at Misano.
Yep, certainly is. Well, got to report that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a good opening to this race. Just less than 10 minutes of it gone. But as I said before, it really is about survival here, and there may be less in terms of proper long battles that we got before, where you really get to see one driver working the other out. There's going to be a bit less of that. This is so this is the other crash. It was Rob Campbell who was spun around. There was a Corvette slowing up in front. He moved right to try and avoid it, not realising the Porsche that was alongside him already, and it was shedding rear end body parts ever since. That's a very damaged Corvette.
Yeah, just a bit. You don't want to see a Corvette like that as Marc-Andre Caron continues to try and defend from Chris Sayong here for that final podium spot. You know, the one benefit for Hovesen making a mistake where and when he did is he only ended up losing around 3.5 seconds of total pace, and he was already around 5 to 6 seconds ahead of Caron at the time.
Yeah. Got an interesting message in from Sean Dickinson here in the YouTube chat. He was in the race earlier talking about the tyres, saying that he's run slicks in wet weather conditions in real life that have more grip than these cars have with wet tyres and wet conditions, which is a pretty interesting observation, I would argue. So that's not particularly ideal. I mean, it just speaks to just how difficult it is, but I mean, does this particularly looking unrealistic to you in terms of wet weather conditions and wet tyres? We've had it for a season or and a half or so now, and you know, to me it looks like these guys are obviously I haven't driven in these conditions, but it looks, you know, realistic to me.
It looks realistic to me too, and I think that all the drivers who are able to make some quick lap times here are making it look realistic as well, trying to find the patches of the dry line that sort of forms. You see that non-shiny gray part, I guess you could say, as we ride on board with Miles Brown. I believe this is a replay of an incident earlier. Yeah, he's way in the back. This is from the start of the race, I believe. Yeah. So first lap, boom, kind of got sandwiched right there, hit car head on to the front left of his machine and kind of got sandwiched on the right side, and that's a car that will not be handling very well to continue on. And you see more cars having issues in front, and that's race over. Look at that for Miles Brown. He just pulls off to the side.
Would you believe it, by the way? Brandon Tabone was the one who was spun around first. I can't remember if we mentioned that already or not, but he remarkably got away without damage and didn't pit either. So that's quite astonishing. The fact that he was hit not only by Brown, but hit or avoided by pretty much half the field, if not more. And he's still going and actually running quite well in the opening part of this race. So that's all good news. Kevin Cantonio went pretty wide there, but it's Chris Soong who we're seeing here trying to get through on Marc-Andre Caron, trying to provide a pass for third place for us here, as these what are normally flat-out right-handers become a lot more difficult. Not this one, which you do have to slow foot down for, whether it's in the dry or the wet. But Soong's finding this quite difficult now, and he spent most of the race stuck behind this Porsche.
Yeah, and, you know, got to give kudos to Marc-Andre Caron for staying out front of him as long as he has done. It has opened the door for Kevin Cantonio to get involved in a podium battle here. I think, you know, you're seeing a completely different level shown by Modolf and Hovesen as Kyle Robertson has an issue. And look at this, Sayong's going to go down the inside of Marc-Andre Caron in the bottom right side of your screen. That's live pictures there. And he really was decisive in making that move as we saw that spin. Oh, be careful with the rejoin here.
Careful.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. Stop.
Go now, then.
Go.
I don't think he can. I think he was spinning the wheels, to be honest. It's wet. But yes. There we go. We'll stop shouting at the drivers now. Chris Soong gets through, though, into third place. Marc-Andre Caron losing at that one. You will have seen it on live pictures there in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. It's all going on back here, isn't it? This is Martin Crisp, who's gained a few places so far in the race. As I mentioned before, he's been a championship contender in seasons gone past. So far this season, down in 10th place overall, and already 31 points behind Gregory Herfson, who is leading the way, although he is losing points to Karl Murdoff. I don't think he'll mind that, not least because he's his teammate, but partly because he started with a 47-point advantage. Murdoff, having DNS last week, doesn't have the luxury of a a drop round, excuse me, to really benefit from. Just to continue our conversation that we're sort of having here with Sean Dickens, and he mentions in YouTube chat, it doesn't look unrealistic, so I suppose we're not wrong in that sense, Dylan. But he says it just feels terrible to him to drive. He'll continue to drive the races in the dry, but not the wet. So glad that we'll be seeing you again in the season, but appreciate the comments. It's always good to get to know what it's actually like on the circuit, because I mean that's a great example of it, isn't it? We can talk all we like about what it looks like, but we've got no idea what it feels like, and that didn't feel good for Dan Moreira or Ryan Reeves in the penultimate corner.
Yeah, that was a sympathy spin, if you've ever seen one right there. I think that's the second one we've seen in tonight, and yeah, what Sean was kind of saying, you know, it's from everything I've heard about it, I've heard amazing things about the rain physics, how the tires feel. I've heard some say that it feels more realistic than in the dry conditions, but at the end of the day, it's so hard to make a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, right? Everyone has their own opinions over, you know, what the right, you know, feel for these cars are in different conditions. So you can be the sweetest peach on a peach tree, but not everybody likes peaches.
I've never heard that phrase before. Have you just made that up?
No, I have not. My mom told me that as I was growing up.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
But it's true, because I don't like peach.
How about you can change it to an apple tree. You can change it to, you know, any kind of thing you want.
Okay. Okay. Oh, well, remember that.
You could be the softest tire on the in the paddock, but not everybody wants one lap speed.
Yeah, there you go. Some people want longevity. There you go. And that's what. Although wet tyres are famously very soft, aren't they? But that analogy slightly falls down for me there. But anyway, I'll keep going with it.
Reality is no.
yeah, we're not dealing with that. Two Porsches fighting for fourth. This is Marc-Andre Garand still going backwards. Now, this is where the question that you were posing before the race starts to come in here, in terms of, are we seeing an obviously quick driver going slowly here because he's trying to make it to the end without stopping, or are we seeing a driver who did well in qualifying now struggle stringing laps together in a relatively long race?
Yeah, as we see it. Wait,
that's Brandon Sabone again getting spun around for the second time today.
Yeah,
this time was a bit more his fault, I would argue.
Yeah, and you know, it's part of the wet conditions. Usually the inside line is where you usually see the apex in dry conditions. It's not always the preferred line. In wet conditions, it's just kind of where the water kind of settles, and you know, that's a situation of trying to make a move down the inside, and historically a corner that you get better traction going on the outside. And I know we keep coming back to this conversation that's going on in the RaceSpotTV YouTube chat, but we always do like to pay attention to what everybody is saying. We try and talk as much as possible. It is a good point, what I've seen here, that this feels like red flag conditions in a real-world racing series, right? And I don't think they'd race in this. We've seen it, you know, in Le Mans, the 24 hours, le 24 du Mans. Pretty good, right? Je peine pour français. Look at this, a potential move down the inside. Hold on 1 second.
Here we go, Kevin Cantonio making his move. Can Garand get back down the inside? No, he is not able to, and fourth place goes to Kevin Cantonio. That was coming, I've got to say. He looked quicker there. Marc-Andre Garand is a fish out, not to use this pun in the wrong area, a fish out of water maybe at the moment. Still running fifth, to be honest. Sorry, fish out of water at the moment, but he's still running fifth. But yeah, he has been overtaking a couple of times, and look at the amount of time that Sewing's been able to put into him in the recent past. As we have a look at this, not a replay, it's live pictures of Devin Brock going very well, extremely well, as the leader of the M-Class.
What was I just saying about not really seeing any top 10 M-Class drives this season?
There you go.
There you go. I'm not sure if the M-Class winner has finished in the top 10 yet. I'll try and figure that out. But hey, P9 right now for Devin Brock, around halfway through this race. Pretty solid.
I'm going to go with no, I don't think. If they have, then only 10th. So this would be an improvement. But I don't think it's happened at all. No, right. So
not in the sprint series.
Yes, not in the sprint series, indeed. I don't know about the. I think Jared DePleur did manage it in the fixed series, but anyway, we'll figure that one out for you. I just want you to kind of finish your point, to be honest, from what we were talking about earlier on. It kicked off quite a lot of discussion in YouTube chat, which is very welcome, by the way. You're welcome to chat along with us, as you are every evening. In fact, as I mentioned, we're broadcasting every PRL series this season, only not on Sunday nights this season, of course. You would just like to finish your point about red flags and weather conditions, basically.
Yeah, and it is true. We don't always see racing in the real world and this detrimental of conditions as Dan Morera goes for a little bit of a slide into the wet grass. This, to me, brings out a red flag every time nowadays in the real world. If you are a fan of IMSA, the WeatherTech Sports Car Series, you might have seen the 6 hours at the Glen, and they had some torrential rain, and they red flagged that session. Of course, in the WEC race at Spa earlier this year, they red flagged it after a crash, so that's a completely different situation. What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of the Spa 24 hours, where there was a lot of rainy conditions there, and of course the Nürburgring 24 hours, they had to pretty much cancel the remaining 2/3 because of fog. So people in the real world, race organizers and officials and marshals are a lot more wary about how dangerous the conditions can be to race in. And at the end of the day, no one, there is an element we all love in this sport that has to do with danger. And in real world racing, you need to find that balance where you have that exhilaration, you have the excitement, but it's not over the line. This is iRacing. This is virtual. No one's getting hurt here. Is there a line?
Oh, that was... Oh, dear. Speaking of lines, Noah Anderson might have been on the white line there, because that was a very aggressive spin and will be big damage as well. That's the kind of thing we're talking about, really. I mean, if you're seeing aquaplaning like that in real life, we're not racing. I take your point. I mean, I've been saying for quite a while that I think red flags for weather are thrown a bit too often, but I guess a race director would never want to be the one responsible for something serious if continue racing conditions turn out to be not suitable, because this job's always a hindsight business, isn't it?
It is.
When you're making those kind of calls, you think, well, we maybe could have raced, and sometimes maybe we shouldn't have raced. It's very easy to know after the fact, but personally, I quite like the fact that iRacing puts us into these red flag conditions, because yes, it's not something you'd see in real life, but that's kind of what sim racing's for, in a sense. It is, in one sense, to create real life conditions and real life racing as closely as we possibly can. And look at the array of different machines we've got on show here and across the grid. In fact, we've got some of the most accurate GT3 machinery and variety of that in the world of sim racing, but also it's for experimenting with things that we don't see in the real world. And I mean, we've got fixed setups tonight, for example. You don't see that very often in the real world, and so that's kind of what it's for. And I personally don't mind the fact we're in very, very bad conditions at the moment.
And Ewan, there is still a massive skill element to this kind of racing. Otherwise, you wouldn't have 10th place 40 seconds behind the leader, while the top two are separated by under a second, right? Like, so there is still a way to be fast here, but it takes to be the very best of the very best to be that way. I mean, everybody in this battle we're seeing right here, kind of in the back, Kyle Robertson, right, in 29th, still on the lead lap, still fast, and still one of the better drivers. All these drivers in PRL are good drivers, But it's conditions like this where I think you see car control at the absolute peak. Yeah, wow, that focused.
That is focus. Absolutely wide-eyed, trying to concentrate on holding the car on the road. And notice how he's keeping it quite high gear too. Doesn't really want to speed, even though these cars have got traction control. It doesn't save you from everything. And you've got to keep a high gear, just as you would do in any other car, just to avoid that slip a little bit. I'm getting quite nervous about this corner now after we saw Noah Anderson going off the road in quite a spectacular way during the last replay or two.
I do appreciate this conversation, though, because I think there is open dialogue to be had. And honestly, you know, it's iRacing is still about, you know, the fastest drivers consistently should win the race in any conditions possible. But sometimes we want to have a little bit more parity in and the wet really does separate specific skills from others.
Yeah, it's a difficult debate to have, I think, and it will continue indeed to go on. But I appreciate all the conversation in the YouTube chat. You're very welcome to chat with us. We do try and get to you as much as we can in these broadcasts, but it is difficult sometimes when there is so much. If you're listening,
tell us that you love us.
Well, I wasn't asking for that, but yeah, Dylan, you can say it to him, not me. I'll throw up probably. Meanwhile, Kolmodov is leading the way. Ever since he took the lead, he has been caught by Gregory Hovsen. That pre-lap comparison doesn't show a great example of it, but look at lap 10 to give you an idea of what's been happening from time to time. Hovsen closing in by quite some distance to his teammate. Now, Kolmodov is the most successful GT3 driver in Precision Racing League history as far as race wins go. He's already got 32 to go with 29 pole positions and 2 championships as well. But looking to extend that to 33 race wins and maybe take his first of the season. It would only actually be his second win in a year and 3 months. What's that? 15 months, 16 months or so. So it has been a bit of a drought. A bit of irony if he ends the drought in some real not drought weather.
That's the second
water-related
pun or saying.
15 minutes to go. There's plenty of time left.
Oh
boy. For us to get some more. But no, he's held on okay so far. I think what we'll be concerned about though is his teammate. Really, there's no getting away from the fact he has been the slower of the two in this race so far. It's just that one error from Hovsen that has earned him the lead.
Sound familiar? I mean, look at what we were just seeing in the fixed race. Jim Feliz was honestly the faster of the two between he and Evan McKay.
Yeah,
McKay was just more consistent, and Feliz had issues, not as big an issue as Ethan Bass just had.
Ethan Bass water-related jokes are endless, so I'm not going to make them.
No!
But anyway, he's well, make your own at home. Put it that way.
He should not have a problem in these conditions.
yeah.
He should feel at home.
He should. Should be taken to this like a duck to water. 20th place for him now, behind a couple of the AMs as well. And speaking of, Devon Brock is still leading by a long way. I know you can't see the second place of the AM very often there, but I'll tell you about them. It is Chris Stewart, 18th, who's second. Dakota Knapp is third in 21st. You may see them flash through the bottom of your screen, but I appreciate you can't see them all the time. So that is the current podium situation in AM. I was thinking at the start of the race, again, to your theory that people might slow down to try and make it on fuel, that Dominic Olivier might be one of those. Well, if he is, it's not working. If he's not, he's really struggling.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of the train right now. All the drivers... Whoa. I guess there's no... off for that. Huh?
Well, he's still out of shape a bit here, and he's going to get dived down the inside by Chris. No. And around the outside... Well, David Holland being aggressive, and the outside might well work quite well in the wet weather conditions. It is a bit more ideal, maybe, than it would have been in the dry, and because the penultimate and final corners are a little bit more one line, you can fire it down the inside and make them move. Somehow... they both get into the final turn without crashing too. That was aggressive from Martin Crisp trying to win that place back.
Yeah, at the same time, David C. Holland, one of those drivers you always expect to be fighting for the win of the race. He had a horrible by his standards qualifying effort. He's trying to make up for it here. 13 minutes to go in the race. He's up to 11, just a spot outside the top 10. Okay, let's talk pit strategy. 15 laps is where, oh no, David Holland went off course, and he loses a spot to Crisp. Here's Jason Finch with a mistake. Oh boy, he's not slowing that down. The gravel's helping him though. Yeah, he slowed that down. Thank you, gravel.
That's there for.
Gravel, are you helping him? Yes.
Oh, Gregory Hofston, excuse me. Gregory Hofston's off the road, and in a big way as well. I think it was at the same corner as what we've just watched on a replay there, because he's all of a sudden nowhere near challenging for the lead. He's 12 seconds adrift now, and
wow,
that is a huge error. I don't know quite how he's managed it, to be honest with you, but he must have found himself deep in the gravel, down at 11, 12 or 13.
Well, the fastest driver in this race, the only one to get into the 148 mark. Remember, it's not just about one lap speed. It's about consistency. He has not had it in this race. He's now just fighting to get back in a second. Here's a replay of what happened here. Carrying a lot of speed, gets on the curbs, tries to get on the brakes.
No.
Yeah, you can't get on the brakes. The gravel, does he hit anything? Oh, a little bit of a tap with the right front. And you are right, the same exact corner. We just saw that issue plague another driver.
I mean, surely after half an hour he would have learnt not to get on that curb there.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't quite understand that, but there you go. It's
Modolf can just coast from here on out.
Yeah, you can.
Just ride the calm waves.
Yeah, can he? I don't know. Trying to invent. Maybe he's inventing a word. A Modolf. He's sort of swanning off. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, at least he didn't mow any grass in this race so far.
No, we should really stop this.
I mean, we should, but just because we should doesn't mean we will.
Yeah, and I started it as well, so I'm sorry. Dominic Olivier is at 10th place at the moment, and he's under so much pressure. Here goes David Holland down the inside, and he should be making his way through, you think, into 10th place. I don't know what it is for Olivier, I'm afraid, but he really has not been going very well in this race. Martin Crisp looking to follow through as well, and he'll be no doubt aggressive in doing so as well, just as he was trying to win that place back from David Holland again. When he lost it, there he goes down the inside, and he's, well, only got his nose alongside, in fact, so he's going to find that pretty difficult. This is, I think, one of Olivier's teammates, is it? This is another curb job for Emmett Lindqvist. Oh, watch out for the wall, and great avoidance of the wall, but a big spin in the final sector.
Wow, these are some high-speed issues. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about what I was going to talk about until we were so rudely interrupted by some spinning drivers. Please don't interrupt us again, Martin Crisp and Dominic Olivier, as there's a bit of a push in the rear. Okay, so 15 laps was what the maximum amount of distance you could cover with a 50% fuel tank was in the dry conditions in GT3 fixed. You've got a 60% fuel capacity in GT3 Sprint Series racing. In dry conditions, you're probably looking at 18 laps, 19 laps with the setup being proper. Here, though, drivers are just finishing up lap 17. There's 9 minutes to go here. I mean, how close are we? I mean, how much have you saved at this point? Can you make it? I don't think you can make it another 5 laps without having to get a very quick splash of fuel. It's around 4 laps saved. I would be questioning if I could do that. Another car is off.
Well, I'm going to do a bit of maths on that as Gregory Hofston gets through on Chris Sowing, by the way. That's a Kyle Robertson getting back up to speed in the Corvette. So Jim Feliz basically ran that tank dry, and actually admitted to us at the end of the race he ran that tank too dry, actually, at the end of that race. So am I right in saying 50% fuel, you said, for fixed in terms of the limit? Is that right?
Say that again for me?
It's 50% is the limit for the fixed series.
Yes, 50% and then 60% for the sprint.
So 10% more of 24 minutes, which is what Feliz managed, is just 2.5 minutes, which is not going to get them anywhere near to even half an hour. But here we are, 32 minutes into the race, and we're still comfortably going. Speaking of going, Martin Crisp has gone for a spin, and he's right in the middle of the road. Oh, I hope everybody's avoided him, and he's not. I think he's either reversed off or he never quite made it onto the road. That was very dangerous, as Crisp has gone from knocking on the door of a top 10 to, I'm afraid, it's dropping like a stone to 15th. It's the favoured place for a spin, I'm afraid, down the final sector again.
Yeah, you know, pit stops.
Here we go.
Kind of on brand. Devin Brock, the AM class leader, by a fair margin. One of the first down pit lane. Does this mean everyone's got to stop? I mean, I feel like yes. I don't think you can save 7.5 minutes of fuel.
No. But
yeah,
you never know. I don't know. We've still got 4 laps to go, probably, maybe 5. So it could be a pretty big stretch. Just 5.3 seconds in the box, though. Devin Brock did not need a lot of fuel at all. You really do save a lot in these wet weather conditions.
You do save a lot, but you're asking a lot from your throttle work, the car itself, the setup, to save that much more fuel.
Yep, leaders in. This is Martin Crisp and what happened to him. So it wasn't through the first right-hander, which has been the common. It's through the second into the third, where he went for a spin. Did he end up on the road?
Oh, just barely, but I think not. He held the brakes at a pretty solid margin. He held them enough, which is good, as Modolf, Siang, Cantonio, everyone's in the pits except for Gregory Hovesen.
Marc-Andre Garon goes through as well. But other than that, everybody going into pit lane for now. I think Modolf's actually going to get ahead of Garon, even despite pitting it. Or maybe not quite, but it's going to be pretty close on the exit there. Still 6 minutes to go. Should be 4 laps in the race. Surely that's too far for Hovsen to go. And I think the organisers have got this pretty bang on in terms of the fuel they've allocated to these drivers, because it's given us a really wide pit window, but also it hasn't given us quite a zero stop race, which would have been pretty on the sleepy side for if everybody just went with no pit stop. That wouldn't have been too good for the race.
Yeah, 100%. It would not have been solid at all if everyone went for that pit stop a little bit earlier. I do wonder, though, has anyone saved even close to having it out? I don't know.
I mean, you've got to think also they've got a formation lap, which is and a full one as well, like that. So that doesn't help. But there you go.
Hold the clutch in, though. You save a lot of fuel then.
Yeah, but I still don't think it's going to be enough, I'm afraid, for Gregory Hovsen, who's making his way around the final corners now. He needs to do this if he wants, because he's not going to catch Carl Modolf, I wouldn't imagine, without
not like he was saving.
Issue. Yeah, and there he goes into the pit lane. Now, Emmett Lindqvist is in the wall. Well, after avoiding the wall quite well through the final few corners a couple of laps ago, that was a less good avoidance. And there, Gregory Hovsen just drives past the stricken Corvette in the pit lane right there. So into the pit lane goes the championship leader. He is going to lose some points to a couple of drivers today, but not really to his nearest rivals. Kevin Cantonio has been nowhere near him, really. 6th place, should be nowhere near Hovsen by the end. Rob Clark, I don't even think is here. If he is, I've not seen him. And most of his main rivals are really nowhere near Gregory Hovsen at the moment. Going past the pit lane there was Marc-Andre again, and Carl Modolf, who gets back to the lead again here. So briefly, in fact, Carl Modolf has lost the lead again. So, I don't think he's going to be worried about Garon going right to the end here, but it's not ideal.
Yeah, no, it's not ideal because Hovsen, has cut down 5 seconds, maybe even 6 seconds on the gap between he and Carl Modolf. This is a fight for the lead here. Garon wants to keep him behind. I don't think he's going to just let him through. Did Marc-Andre do enough? That would be shocking.
Oh, Kyle Robertson is going for a big spin too. It's getting quite common, isn't it, at the end of the lap here to go for a big spin there. Interesting that it's more common now than it was at the start of the race. I guess maybe track conditions are deteriorating further.
this is going to tell us a lot if Marc-Andre Garon stays out again.
Yeah, he couldn't, could he?
I don't think so. I mean, if he stays out again, the next time
also, by the way, sorry to cut you off. Also, Gregory Hofsson is closing in rapidly as a result of this. Karl Modov is finding this overtake difficult, and he's losing heaps of time as a result. Gap now 4 seconds from double figures at the pit stops, and Garon carries on. He couldn't get this to the end, could he? This would be spectacular for Marc-Andre Garon, who goes up to the penultimate lap in the lead of the race with fuel still clearly on board.
I mean, hey, why not try it? If you come in during the white flag lap, then to me, that is you trying something, but it didn't work.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
So, Ludecky is in. Out of any of the front pack, I'll try and see if there's any others that try and stretch this. Right now, Marc-Andre Garon is a lap and a half away from pulling off an incredible feat. Hedgecox.
Yeah, mate. Well, he's still sick, actually. And that is a... Oh, I thought we were going to save it. That would have been great. No, didn't quite do it. And now he's off for a very painful excursion in the grass. Actually, he's made the grass look a bit... Oh, don't rejoin like that. That was close to disaster.
By the way, the gap, again, is 3 seconds now between Modov and Hofsson.
Yeah. So even if Garon does come in here, then Hofsson's got to shout. He's within throwing distance, but I just don't think he's got enough laps left to really get involved here for Delta Sport. Well, the lights are flashing now for Garon, and you can absolutely understand why. There's lap cars in the way here, and he will not want to be interrupted into the final moments of this race. Modov on the curb there as he maybe just tries to push the envelope a little bit too much here, tries to find his way past Garon. Has he been banking on the fact the Porsche driver in the 111 will come into the pit lane at some point? Is he going to be given a big surprise at the end of this race? We've got less than a minute to go. We've got 1 lap left. Has he got enough fuel to go here, Garon? He has, and we've got a race on for the win. Now, Marc-Andre Garon has pulled off the shock of all shocks, and all of a sudden he's got to defend from Karl Modov, who also knows he's got to make a move. With 2 lap cars in the way, the white flag waves, and it's side by side into turn 1 on the last lap. Down the inside goes Modov. He brakes later. Garon goes for the switch back. He'll be on the outside for turn 3. He can switch himself back again here. The corners come to him. There's lap cars in the way again. Here goes Garon down the inside. He's made it. He's up alongside. Modov cuts him off. And the lap cars continue to make a nuisance of themselves. Oh, this is quite dramatic on the last lap of...
Hofsson is just a second back of Marc-Andre Garon right now as we officially have time expire. I'm shocked that the lap traffic didn't get out of the way.
And look at the Ferrari as well, and the Ford maybe preventing Hofsson from getting involved here right at the very end. He was really trying, and you see bottom of your screen trying too hard in towards turn 4, to be honest with you. Surely Marc-Andre Garon is going to give this one a go, and he will. Looks down the inside. He's on a very tight line. The way through turn 10. He's got one last chance in the final sector now.
I don't think he's going to have enough. I think he's going to... he was saving. He's now in the slipstream. He's a half second back. There's a Modov's race to lose now.
Got to try. Just do something. It's got to be, but I don't think it is. But Marc-Andre Garon, a spectacular feat of fuel saving.
Run out.
He might run out, that's true, but a spectacular feat of fuel saving comes to a bitterly disappointing end for him. Karl Modov has survived the scare of his life there. He's won 32 times in the Precision Racing League GT3 Championships down the years, but I don't think many will have come as quite a shock to him as this one. A topsy-turvy round at Misano ends in Karl Modov's 33rd PRL GT3 win, and he hangs on to a heroic drive ahead of Marc-Andre Garon. He will win every Driver of the Day award that is going after that race, because that was special.
That was awesome. I mean, come on. I don't think any of us expected that kind of race on our hands. And, I mean, yeah, Modov was the best driver overall, but he almost lost it in multiple ways there at the end. Gotta say, disappointed with the lap traffic for getting as involved as they were on that last lap.
Yeah, difficult, of course, but they were in their own fight, but they were certainly a factor in the end of that race. Meanwhile, Chris Stewart's leading all of a sudden in AM. Am I forgetting something? Have we missed something? Devin Brock is down in 17th. Chris Stewart hasn't pitted, that's right. Apologies, I missed that. Chris Stewart hadn't pitted, and he's certainly not the only one, Marc-Andre Garand, to have not pitted. Dominic Olivier didn't. We suspected that. Fernando Yaquez also didn't pit, but over the line, by the way, goes Chris Stewart to win in AM from, where was that? 13th overall in the race, just hanging on ahead of Holland, who did pit. Kevin Simpson and Nonu Genet didn't pit ahead of him. Neither did Jeremy Gonsalves, and so it wasn't quite my prediction of it being the norm.
It was half and half pretty much.
Well, I don't know. We'll count the ones who made it all to the end without too many, one lap down or less. Out of 32, I think maybe a quarter at best, but maybe more than we expected.
Maybe. That's Chris Stewart's second straight AM class win. What a topsy-turvy race in the wet.
Fantastic, though. Thoroughly enjoyable. And in the end, Karmodov wins a classic battle at the end. 1.1 seconds between himself and Garon. And Hobson nearly got there too. Chris Soong, who even deserved to win out of those three? Who could make a case for all? Chris Soong finishes 4th ahead of Kevin Cantonio, and then the gaps get really big. Jack Hedgecoach finishes 6th ahead of Luke Deckett. Then it's Dominic Olivier, Fernando Yaquez, who didn't pit. Rob Clark, who finishes 10th after a very quiet race, I've got to say. He'll lose points to Hovston in the championship. On his name, Kevin Simpson finish in 11th and 12th. Chris Stewart, the first of the AMs, wins from 13th out of David Holland and Young. Devin Brock might be disappointed to finish second after all of that. Jeremy Gonsalves, Brandon Timone, J.R. Williams and Conor Wagner round out the top 20. Also on the lead lap were Martin Crisp, who had a couple of spins towards the end. Andrew Lanning, who had an issue, I think he started from the pit lane, or he had an issue on the first lap. Ethan Bass had that spin that we saw earlier on. Dakota Knapp, Peter Moller, Jason Finch all finished on the lead lap there. By the way, Peter Moller is going to lose ground in the AM Championship lead, finishing all the way down there. Ryan Reeves was the first driver 1 lap down. He got passed by the leaders right at the end, along with Matt Scherf. They were fighting for 27th on the last lap there. Joshua Spears and Kyle Robertson round out the top 30. Then you get Jeff Carollo and Dan Moreira, and then those that didn't finish the race or cross the line anyway. Aaron Beaver, Emmett Lindqvist, Noah Anderson, Drake Smith, Rob Campbell, Thomas Rep and Miles Brown. So that is it for the racing. Let's jump straight into a chat with the winners and podium place finishers, starting with Karl Murdoff. Welcome in, Karl. Good to have you with us. That's the 33rd time you've crossed the line in the lead and indeed won a PRL GT3 race. But I don't think, I haven't seen all of those 33, of course, but I don't think many will have been quite like that. First of all, the rain and how difficult that was to contend with, but also Marc-Andre Garand saving a good 4 laps of fuel compared to a lot of the other contenders you pitted with, among so many others. What were you feeling through those final few laps? Did you really believe you could even get to the end there?
Oh man, it's good to talk to you guys too. That was a very stressful end of the race for sure. I thought Mark maybe saved a couple of laps, but I was expecting him every lap to kind of pull off. So I'm like, because you cannot see anything with the spray on iRacing right now. So you're just blind and trying not to run into him or go off the track, because if you touch the curbs, your race is done pretty much. So every lap, I'm fingers crossed, hoping he pits, and then we came to get the white, and I'm like, all right, yeah, he obviously saved enough, so I'm gonna have to go for it here. And thankfully, he got a lot of curb coming onto the straight to get the white, and I'm guessing his traction control kicked in. But then that wasn't very straightforward either, because we had the lap car coming up on the left, and then we had Ryan come out of the pits, so that was a hairy last lap. I definitely feel like there was rain coming in my car with how much I've been sweating, but yeah, a lot of fun, good race. Yeah, I'm stoked to be able to pull off the victory today. Yeah, it's a dramatic ending to the race for sure, and the weather conditions very much played a role in that. Do you feel that the weather conditions in iRacing do sort of go past the point of being good to drive in? Not in a sense of that you'd rather it be dry, because I think more often than not people are going to wish that it was dry weather rather than rain once the novelty.
starts to wear off. But do you feel like these conditions definitely wouldn't be raced in real life? We probably see red flag. Do you think that's these conditions are sort of too far for us to go in iRacing, or do you really torrential wet weather conditions that would probably see a stoppage to the race in real life?
I don't know. It's a tough question. It's the track surface itself doesn't feel too dangerous to drive. It's just the spray is so bad, and I grew up racing, so I've raced in the rain and karting, and I know the spray is really bad, but I feel like you can see through it a little better. This is kind of just a gray wall, so I think the track conditions are okay. They were definitely manageable, although hairy and definitely tense throughout the race. It's just the spray for me feels. It's just very hard to follow. There's no way I would have ever passed Greg if he hadn't made a little mistake, through the high speed. Just because the spray's so bad, it's really hard to get close. So I wish, even if it is realistic, I don't know, maybe the way the graphics are rendered, it'd be nice if they kind of cleared that up a little bit just to improve visibility. Because right now, it definitely is kind of the downside to racing in the rain.
All right, well, congratulations for overcoming that here tonight, and thanks for chatting to us too.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for being here and announcing. Thanks to PRL. Thanks to Delta Sport, and then all my friends and family that tune in. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Carmodov there, the race winner tonight from that one. Just about hanging on from an astonishing drive from Marc-Andre Garon, who is now standing by with Dylan.
Yeah, Marc-Andre, what a fantastic performance from you. We were wondering all race if anyone was going to be able to make it on fuel, and I guess the decision had to be made early on for you to save in the chance of it going all 22 laps on the circuit without pitting. Were you in save mode the whole time?
Yeah, from the beginning. I mean, the fact that I was able to qualify in the front, probably gonna have like a clear track for much of my race, so I was like on point to save fuel until the end. It was missing just maybe like a couple of seconds at the end. It was a good battle with Carl, but not enough today to get the win. And that traffic at the end maybe like not screw me up, but maybe, I don't know. I'm gonna have to check that back.
Yeah, so talk about that. The spray, obviously, we've heard is very difficult to see past in iRacing right now, and you had a lot of traffic, and just your thoughts on that traffic kind of playing a factor in that last lap.
Yeah, well, I was not seeing anything in the front, honestly. I almost touched Carl in, I think, turn 3, 4. And also the spray was kind of like an advantage for us to save fuel today, because people behind me were struggling to pass, so it was giving me a buffer for the end. So yeah, it's kind of tough. Like Carl was saying, the spray is so intense that we're not seeing anything.
All right. Well, Marc-Andre, anyone you want to give a shout out to, thank today for this second place performance?
Well, thanks to my team, SCR, sponsor, Jordan. Jordan, a couple of other brands that I'm not used to do some interviews, so I don't remember the sponsors. But yeah, thanks to my team, much appreciated, and it was fun.
Heck yeah. Hey, at least you're being honest there, Marc-Andre. Congratulations on the podium finish, and hopefully we're talking to you a little bit more throughout the rest of this season.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that was Marc-Andre Garon doing a solid job to save as much fuel as possible, and almost was able to pull it off. And someone else who was almost able to pull it off after some big mistakes in this race was Gregory Hoveson. You're standing by with him.
Absolutely. Welcome in, Greg. Good to have you with us again. Do you feel a bit frustrated with the way that race ended? You were catching the leaders, then you fell away with a mistake and catching them again. You got very close towards the end there as well. Pleased with the podium, or frustrated you didn't get more?
Yeah, pretty frustrated at the end of the day. It is what it is. I made my own mistake in the beginning. Just touched a little bit of paint and went off, and luckily I saved it, and then lost a couple seconds to Carl, but I was able to get it all back just before the stop, basically, or a little bit before the stop, and then going through the high-speed right-hander there, it's usually flat, but I guess conditions changed a little bit, and it wasn't flat, and I just followed Carl. He went off as well on the same lap as me, but I just went off a little bit more, And yeah, I ended up hitting the wall pretty good and finishing the race with pretty bent steering. But yeah, all in all, with broken car and all of that, I can be happy with the pace. But you know, just a mistake on my end. It's my first rain race, so we'll take it, I guess.
Exactly, you've got to start somewhere, and it looked like very difficult conditions to start with as well. The only thing that we could point to maybe is for conditions getting worse is the frequency of crashes, especially in that fast 3 right-handers you were just referencing there. The frequency of crashes through there going up, not least yourself, but also the fact that the lap times were getting slower as well. But you know, that's not, you know, they're kind of obvious things. What was it actually like to drive on throughout the race, not from the start necessarily, but how did it get worse?
Yeah, towards the end, you just didn't really have much front end. It wasn't that the rear was scary or anything. It's just the front end sort of died on you throughout the race with the extra water on the track. So it made that first right-hander, fast right-hander, a little bit of a lift, at least in the Lambo. I'm not sure about the other cars, of course, but yeah, we sort of had to mitigate with a little bit of a lift, and then from then on, it was just sort of management after I shunted the wall.
Hey, it's these things you've got to manage. Congratulations on a podium place in the end, and thanks very much for coming to chat to us.
Yeah, thanks, you. I just want to give a thanks to all the guys at Delta Sport, of course. Congrats to Carl again on the win, and yeah, hopefully we can have a bit of a better showing next week without a shunt.
Thanks very much. Greg hosting third place there tonight in the PRL GT3 Sprint Series. In the AM class, it was Chris Stewart who took the win, and he's with 2. Welcome in, Chris. Good to have you with us. How much credit can you give and can we give to the fact you didn't make a pit stop there for you to grab that win? Some will say that you only managed it because of that. Some will say you managed your strategy very well to do so. Are you going to give yourself the credit for saving the fuel and taking the win despite what looked like a very big margin for everybody to catch up with such a good starting position and indeed opening to the race for Devin?
Yeah, for sure. I'm 100% going to give myself the credit for that one. At the end of the day, strategy is a big part of it, but also kept it on the road and did my job. So, yeah, absolutely going to take credit for it.
Exactly, and so you should as well. Tell us a little bit about your race, because with the fuel-saving races, generally, especially when you come from the mid-pack, which often happens in the AM class because of where you are in the field, we don't get to see a lot of you sometimes in the sea of cars that sometimes, and sea in a literal sense in this race, I suppose, that you get in one of these races. Tell us a little bit about your race, a little bit about the start especially, which was quite chaotic in the midfield, and how you got on throughout.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a lot of it is just a little bit lucky, not getting caught up in anything, not getting hit from behind, you know, just a lot of it's that. A lot of it's just keeping your nose clean. I think I did that through the entire race, and massive shout out to Mr. Jason Allen for his, he was a little bit of our pit strategy guy tonight. Helped out tremendously, helped me figure out exactly what I needed to hit per lap to get through the race with no pit stop. I feel like we executed that flawlessly. I had maybe a 1/10 of a liter left at the end of the race, and here we are.
Absolutely. Congratulations on the win tonight, Chris, and thanks very much for coming to chat to us too.
Absolutely. Shout out Sim Racing. Love you guys.
Thanks very much, Chris. Thanks very much, Chris Stewart there, the race winner in AM tonight of the PRL GT3 Sprint Series. And one more to get to because, I don't think... have we got the other podium... Have we got any other podium drivers with us? Yes, we do. Dakota Knapp, he's there. Good. We'll bring him for one last chat as well. Dakota, welcome into the booth. Good to have you with us. Third place in AM, despite being quite a few positions behind the other two in the AM class. You were one of those who made a pit stop, although it was a very short one. I'm not even sure if... Is that... Well, anyway. Tell us a little bit about your race. As I said to Chris before, a lot of the AM field gets sunk in the midfield very much among everybody else. So what was your race like?
Oh man, it was absolute carnage there for a little bit, and I just focused so much on keeping my nose clean, staying out of the mess, and huge shout out to Chris Stewart, man. If I had the foresight to just fuel save this whole time, I could have made it no stop like him, and I think we would have had a good fight at the end, but yeah, I had to stop in for that splash and dash, and it was nuts for me. I've never raced in the rain, I've never driven in the rain, and I've never driven at this track. So it was a completely new learning experience from every aspect, and it was a blast.
Yeah, just to make things easier for yourself, you've gone for one of the newest cars as well. So
yeah, well,
a lot to learn.
I give it to my mom because my mom is in love with the Corvette. So I grew up, seeing Corvettes all the time and just always hearing about how obsessed she was with Corvettes. So as soon as I knew it was going to get released, I was like, I have to buy it, of course.
Well, there you go, and it's served you well so far. Does this set you up for the rest of the season? I mean, we are expecting to see the rain again, and maybe you'll be a bit better prepared for the strategic odd things that happen in wet weather conditions that you'd never consider making it on the stops in the drive, for example. How does this set you up for the rest of the season? We're still seeing.
I think I'm set up pretty well. Now that I have some rain experience, all of one race, I know that you're really not using that much fuel, so I'll have to rethink the strategy completely. Keep the same kind of idea going forward with the mid-pack shenanigans, being that I'm in the AM class. So really, I'm gonna lean on my teammates. Shout out Heartland Autosport, Drake Smith, Andrew Lanning, Max Boisvert, and Aaron Beaver. Those guys are awesome. Unfortunately, they didn't have the best race today, but I'm glad I could bring something home for the team and strategize, chat with each other, and just look forward to the next race.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you there, Dakota. Thanks very much for coming to chat to us, and congratulations on the podium.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dakota Knapp there, third place in the AM field after 40 minutes of racing here at Misano. Well, there was two races dealing with two very different feels to them, and the two races we're going to get next week will have a different feel to them too. It's the Brand Hatch Grand Prix circuit, coverage beginning at 8:30 EST on July the 16th. That's next week, of course. Still got another night or two, indeed two, nights of racing to come here in the PRL this week on RaceSpotTV, so make sure you join us for that too. But what a night we've had here in the GT3s. Our first GT3 rain race of the season here, and it came in the Sprint Series. It certainly delivered.
Yeah, it absolutely delivered, and I think we're going to see some more solid races, whether it's in the dry or in the wet, as this season continues on. But 3 races down, 6 to go, and after 2 more races, we're going to start to see some drop week points factored in.
We certainly are, as we wind up towards the end of another Precision Racing League season. We're barely getting started, though. Third of the way through the GT3 Fixed and Sprint Series here for Season 3 of 2024. I very much hope you've enjoyed the coverage here this evening. It's been myself, Ian Lee, alongside with Ramiro Agustin Cisneros behind the cameras. Either we'll see you tomorrow for more over racing, or we'll see you next week at Brands Hatch. But from us, it's goodbye for now.